was like, you want to roll? I go, no, I don't. I'll do it now, but then I'm like, no, but...
I've been doing it a long time, man. I started jiu-jitsu in 96.
We're rolling tomorrow, right?
Yeah,
tomorrow. I'm calling them now. We're going to probably roll around 8:30 in the morning, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, we could do that.
What's different about jiu-jitsu and wrestling? What's the difference?
Depending upon whether or not you use a gi. The gi is a big factor because you could grab a hold of that, and it makes you more defensive-minded because you can get caught in things, you can get caught in submissions easier. Submissions are the big thing, obviously, but I do a lot of no gi. I have a black belt in no gi jiu-jitsu and gi jiu-jitsu. I actually prefer no gi.
What do you want to do tomorrow?
We do whatever. We do gi. I don't care. I just don't use it. I just don't use the gi. You know, I let people grab mine, but I try to use arm bars and chokes and things that I would do no gi. That's how I trained from gi to no gi so that I could do both. I just decided that I'm just going to train in the gi like I don't have one on. Like let people grab. I'll recognize that I have it on, so people can grab me, but I don't grab theirs. I just use overhooks and underhooks.
Okay. I was trying to make a joke out of no gi.
Oh.
Somebody had no gi.
Joe's a gi lord.
It is definitely a slower game. Like older dudes in particular, they seem to like the gi because they can kind of control you.
It's good for you, and it can also be used against you, which is bad.
Cool. Well, it's if you have a winter coat on, man. Like I always said that the worst thing to do is get in a fight with a judo black belt when you got a winter coat on.
Oh yeah.
Just grab
or even a suit.
Even a sweater like that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a middleweight title.
We're looking at you.
So David.
Yeah. You got your blue belt now, right?
Yeah.
When do you think you get a purple belt? You're on your way, right?
I gotta get some stripes. I talked to JJ about it. I go, dude, I'm trying to train more so I can get a stripe. He goes, yeah, you're due for a stripe. I go, well,
come on.
I gotta fucking train more so I can get the stripe. I don't want the stripe. I want to earn the stripe.
Are you doing things other than your jiu-jitsu training in terms of like physical training?
Maybe little dumbbells and yoga ball.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. You get a trainer. Get someone like it'll make a big difference. It's like think about your body as like a race car, right? If you could just lift weights and your race car would go faster, wouldn't you do that? Like if there was a thing you could do,
I do my little dumbbells, but my elbow fucking hurts lately. So like,
quit being a baby.
This is the thing I was talking about.
What do you do?
Tennis elbow. I was having a problem with my elbow. You hold it like that, like you twist it like this, and then you untwist it with your arm.
His preparation for this bout has gone absolutely according to plan. He's in fantastic shape with a great lead.
But it's just so shitty how I got it. Fucking sleep.
Could we have him try that right now?
Let's see. Damn, it's a lot heavier than it looks. So you twist it?
And then untwist it. Yeah, like twist it like that, right? And then level it out, and then slowly untwist it.
He will have a 2-inch reach advantage.
He's going to do it over and over and over again.
It's far more dense than it looks.
Yeah, it's great for your tendons. It specifically works this part of your arm, like down in here.
Now you just look like you're jerking off again.
That's good too. You know what else is good? A roller. You know, like when you have one of those cords. No, a cord with like a weight at the bottom of it, and you got to roll it with your wrist.
Oh yeah, we used to do that in boxing back in the day.
Those are great.
People just used to fabricate them in the gym.
Yeah,
I remember those.
Yeah, like a stick.
Yeah.
A rope. Those are great. Yeah, I have one of those out there too. It's just that's one of the best.
Yeah, for your forearms, right?
Yeah, for your forearms and gripping, just have that kind of strength.
Good.
You would be awesome at jiu-jitsu, I guarantee you, because you're a chess player, and jiu-jitsu is very cerebral. You know, boxing obviously is very cerebral too, but you're limited in your weapons. You only have a certain amount of angles you can punch from. Whereas jiu-jitsu, there's an endless combination.
And you get some time to think in certain positions.
Yeah.
I had a teacher that did it.
Aikido?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wrist locks.
Mm-hmm. That's what he did to that dude at the jewelry shop.
I did a half a kilo of jiu-jitsu.
He did something to me, and I realized, okay, gotta watch out for that. It's where, person manipulates you, don't drops it hard.
Oh, yeah. That shit could break your hand too, though.
If you don't go with it, it'll break your hand.
Yeah.
Fredson push out some shit to people.
Yeah, Marcelo Garcia's tapped people out, like high-level people with wrist locks and jiu-jitsu trainings.
Yeah, John Jack was showing me like how to wrist lock a guy while you're jumping. Like, damn.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not nice. Don't do it to people. You can do this if you want.
Yeah, there's some nasty shit. The thing is, like, there's no end to jiu-jitsu. There's no end.
And there's no, like, these are all the moves and that's it. People keep inventing moves.
Constantly. I just found out a new move yesterday. One Rubber Guard Assassins on Instagram.
Right.
They figured out some crazy Kimura you do from a closed guard that leads to a triangle. I'm like, what the fuck?
But you gotta, like, somebody has to let you do a lot of those things to them.
Some of them, yeah. Well, sometimes people don't know what you're doing. They don't even know you're letting them do it.
I'm always concerned about rubber guard with your knees, like fucking up your knee joints. Because you got to be very flexible to get that rubber guard in.
Yeah, just stretch.
Yeah.
Stretch.
Rubber guard? I don't know.
It's,
you know what that is?
It's where you put somebody in between your legs. When you describe it, it sounds so gay. You put somebody between your legs, and then you pull your leg over their head, but their head has to pop through. Now you're controlling them. You can hold their head this way. It's
I don't remember what I'm doing, so
I don't have the ability to do it.
It was invented by my friend Eddie Bravo, but there was some guys who would play high guard before that. He just put it into a more. There it is. That's a good example of it. That's what it looks like. So he's pulling down using his leg and his arms to control a guy and wraps him up and
While he's down.
yeah. Well, yeah. So he's on the bottom.
Looks like a Gracie move.
It's a jiu-jitsu move. So
It's a Bravo move.
all jiu-jitsu essentially.
That's Eddie right there.
Yeah, there it is.
Eddie and Joe came up under my teacher, and then Eddie took it to another level.
Well, Eddie just branched out and went into no-gi. He's much more, but he has black belt in gi as well. Much more concerned with no-gi techniques because he wanted techniques that would work in mixed martial arts. So in mixed martial arts, you don't have the collars to grab, the sleeves to grab. So he wanted to invent a system that you could use, especially when you have the ability to fight off your back. It's very when you fight. That's Ben Saunders, who's like one of the best at it in MMA. If you get wrapped up, you're on top of a dude who wraps you up with his legs like that. It's very demoralizing.
Yeah.
You get so trapped.
Yeah, human nature tells you when you're on your back and this guy on top of you, you're in trouble. But in jiu-jitsu, you're like, thanks, fine.
Yeah, if you got a good guard like John Jock. Yeah. Are you really interested in that? Where do you live these days?
I live in Canada.
You still live in Toronto?
Yeah, I was in Jamaica for a minute.
Yeah. You live in Jamaica?
Yeah, that's fine.
I love Toronto. It's one of my favorite places on the
That's where you
planet.
first met him. Introduced it to me.
Yeah, I was telling him earlier.
At the nightclub.
Yeah.
I took Joe to the nightclub to meet Lennox.
And I remember that meeting now.
Yeah.
That's when, what's his name was playing? Scratch was playing, and everybody was there.
Toronto's just such a perfect city. It's like the people are nice, but it's urban. Like it's very populated. There's a lot of people, but they don't have that asshole vibe that like New York has.
I think it's the 5th largest city in North America.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's like they're building like mad over there.
Yeah.
A lot of condos made out of glass. Renters market.
But tiny.
Well, there's so much cool shit there. Now the weed's legal. It's probably booming in Canada.
But weed was never really an issue there. If you got caught with it, like, just give me, just stop it.
But now it's like you go to the stores. The stores on the street. Like,
Is it that easy over there? Is that
oh,
what they
yeah.
got?
Yeah, I think they have
Haven't
a
been
couple
back
stores. There's a couple
We saw
stores.
some. We saw some stores.
Someone trying
They're
to fight.
opening like about 25
I'm
or
gonna make
50
somebody.
in Toronto. So the government's giving them.
It's a great place, man. I did that place that you do. That the
Their
Scotia
Canada Center.
Yeah.
Oh,
Talking about one of my
Scotiabank.
favorite new fighters.
I just did it in
My favorite
November. He
fighter of
came.
all time.
And then you were there, I think, like a month before me when I
Yeah,
left.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was there before my Netflix special came out. It came out in October, so I think I was there on that. Yeah, I fucking love it up there, man. That's probably one of my favorite cities to
God, it's
visit.
tough.
Come on back.
decision.
I love it. Massey Hall, love that
We
place.
did that together.
Yes, that was fun, man.
You, me, and Big J.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, that was a good time, man. The UFC's there was great too.
Yeah.
Anderson's probably
Good
still on the
support. I
ground.
love it
now.
up there.
Yeah. Well, it's just Toronto's just such an unusual city. Like Canada in general. Like,
Yeah, bitch.
I'll ask you this: why are people so nice? They're so much nicer than Americans.
It's, no, it's different.
There's nice Americans.
There's not-
When you say nice, you're saying
Friendlier.
they're more
More
polite.
polite,
Yeah,
yes.
more polite.
Yes.
I find that too.
I think
Yeah.
Americans are nicer on as far as.
Have you been to New York lately?
Yeah, I love it. Here's the thing: Canadians are polite, but we'll talk shit about you when you're not looking.
I take that. I'll take that over being rude.
But Canadians can also get freaked out by people being forward, which Americans are considered very forward, and you know, it's an outgoing thing. So, whereas an American's like, hey, I want to ask you something. And Canadians are like, oh, why is this person so aggressive? Whereas a Canadian would be like, excuse me, I have to ask you a question.
Yeah, that's true.
It's very similar, but just different approaches.
Why, as far as like stand-up comedy, how good is the community in Canada? Is it like the community in America where there's a lot of up-and-coming people? Or is it
there's a lot of comics in Canada. A lot of great ones come out of Canada. The problem is there's no... the money's not there. So no matter...
Touring around.
Yeah, like the clubs, once you get... the clubs tap out at maybe you'll make... Let's see 6 shows on a weekend. A good headliner can make $1,200. That's it. I mean, that's pretty fucking insane.
Yeah, it's rough, especially if they're selling out and making drink.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is that the club? I liken it to the UFC almost to a certain degree. It's not about the comic, it's about the name of the club.
Like Yuck Yucks.
Yeah, Yuck Yucks is about Yuck Yucks. It doesn't matter who's there, it's about Yuck Yucks. The UFC is about UFC, it doesn't matter who the fucking fighter is.
They used to have that attitude at some of the clubs in LA. That was one of the reasons why they had that big comic strike way back in the 70s.
Yeah.
It's because people felt like the comics were the ones who were providing the art form, the clubs were the ones who make all the money. Yes. They were like, hey, you're at the Improv, or you're at the Comedy Store.
The pay scale at these clubs is the same as it was in the 80s, which is fucking horrible. Like, I take people out on the road with me, and the clubs will pay $50 for an MC for the weekend, and $100 for a feature. I'm like, that's what it was. I started in '89, and that's what it was back then.
That's crazy.
It's still like that, and I'm like, that's terrible. Like, how are these kids going to make a living?
Well, in a way, it's a lot like boxing, because when people think that boxers make $1 million, because Floyd Mayweather make $100 million in the fight, that is true. But if you look at the undercard, there's guys that are fighting for chump change. And they are going through a long camp. Do you remember your first paycheck?
Yeah.
What was your first boxing paycheck?
$5,000.
Wow.
That's because I'm coming out of the Olympics, baby.
Yeah,
That's a champion.
But even still, that's
Up after a while.
I mean, you're an exception. I mean, there's guys fighting out there for like $800.
Yeah. 500, 300.
Yeah.
So
another thing that disturbs me about MMA as opposed to boxing is the win-lose bonus. I don't like that. I think a fighter should get paid what they're supposed to get paid. No one's trying to lose. And if you're trying to lose, you're never going to be able to compete at the highest level anyway. These guys are pouring their heart and soul. They're giving their body. They're literally sacrificing their health. And they might get fucked out of a decision. And because of that, they lose 50% of their money. So some incompetent judge, which in boxing is everywhere. How dare you? What is it? It was even worse than hers. People that don't even do it anymore because they were chased out of the game.
Every time I listen to that's what you're a fan of the sport. When you hear the judges names, go, fuck, not that guy.
Yeah. So there was a lot of them, man. A lot of them. But imagine if 50% of your purse goes away because someone doesn't know what the fuck they're doing.
So wait, the win-lose bonus, they're guaranteed a certain amount.
They're guaranteed a certain amount, but that's the show. Like say this. Right. Like say maybe you would get 10 and 10. So you get $10,000 to fight and $10,000 more if you win. Right. But it's crazy. It's oftentimes 50%. And the idea is that you're going to give these fighters an incentive to put on a better show. But I don't like... And
then fight of the night.
Yeah. I don't like when people fight any different than the way they're fighting when they're fighting the best and the smartest.
Right.
I think you should fight intelligently. You shouldn't engage in a wild brawl because you want some performance bonus. Because they'll give out performance of the night or knockout of the night.
Can you lose and still get the fight of the night bonus?
Yes.
Cerrone's got a ton of those.
He's got a ton of bonuses. But I mean, that's him though. He would fight that way if you gave him a guarantee.
Oh yeah,
he's a perfect example. If he knew he was going to make $500,000 a fight, no matter what, he would fight exactly that way. That's how he fights. Mm-hmm. And I think that's how it should be.
He's an anomaly though because he grew up with money, didn't he? He grew up with a decent lifestyle.
Terribly poor. He wasn't wealthy.
I thought he had money. I thought he grew up with a decent amount of money. That's the way I was sold it.
I don't believe so. I don't want to speak high school though.
Me neither. But I have always been like he's funny.
BJ Penn did. You know, BJ Penn was a legend. BJ grew up with a wealthy family. They're wealthy. He just was a fighter.
Just he fights it. I just saw somewhere he's fighting.
He's gonna fight Clay
Real
Guida.
rock star.
Yes, that's a fucking odd one. I thought he retired.
He did. He got bored. So he still wants to do it. He actually looked very good in his last fight. Up until
Clay
the time
Guida
he
was a
got
very
leg
exciting
locked.
fighter back in the day.
He's still a wild man.
Yeah.
He's still a wild, but he got leg locked by Ryan Hall, who's just this phenomenal jiu-jitsu player. And he caught him with he did a Imanari roll and caught him in a leg lock and just fucked his leg up.
Eminari roll.
Yeah.
You talking about?
It sounds like something you eat at a sushi place.
Could I get Eminari
I think it was an Imanari roll. Imanari is this very famous Japanese fighter who is a phenomenal leg lock artist. And
First
there's actually two
name,
moves. There's the Imanari roll and there's an Imanari, which an Imanari comes
Imanari
from omoplata. An omoplata is a shoulder lock. I think it's a Portuguese word. I think that's what they call it, omoplata.
Yeah, I mean, it's from your leg.
It's a shoulder lock, and then the Imanari is while you're locked up in the omoplata, you grab like a grip underneath the guy's chin and you yank him back. It's a nasty. Now I'll show you tomorrow.
I hope not. I really hope not. Can't we just have a friendly roll?
We can, but if you catch yourself in an omoplata, it's coming.
You know what's funny is when I'm a big fan of the in-arm choke, which I know is your favorite.
Head and arm, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yes, sir.
yeah, and then Jack now calls it the Joe Hogan. Some would do, get the Joe Hogan, and that's your move. It's now your move at the gym.
Well, sometimes you have like techniques that you hit so often that you just know when they're there,
Yeah.
and you can close them up real quick.
Yeah,
That was always my shit.
that's what ever since then, I've actually been working on that.
Well, so many guys did it to me, and it's such a suffocating feeling when someone's on top of you and you got your arm pinned here, their arms across your neck, and you're like, ugh. It's such a
And you make that
horrible-
noise, funny enough, too.
Oh, it's a horrible way to get choked out.
With the Estimo lock. I like when
Yeah.
guys get locks named after them.
How do you get out of it?
Well, you have to put your hand on your ear like you're answering the phone. That's one. The first thing is you're trying to create some space here so that you don't go to sleep. You gotta give into the fact that this guy's choking this side of your neck for sure. So the arm's coming under here and it's wrapping around here. And if you just go like that and it's down, or like that, it's going to get smushed. You're getting smushed, right? So you gotta bring this thing in here, and you're trying to create a little bit of space.
Ah.
And then you hope this motherfucker gets tired of squeezing your neck. And then you're trying to get in here and create a little bit of space. That's all you're trying to do. Just give me a little bit of space at a time.
He's
Just
a
a little bit of
doctor.
space. Just get a little bit of space. It's all just a matter of little inches, little tiny micro movements. But when someone has your arm wrapped up like that, and they have that arm across your neck, and they're crushing you with their body weight, and then they get their knee on your solar plexus and flatten you out and squeeze down, it's horrible.
Are there fighters in other countries that don't go into MMA, but they're unbelievable fighters, but they're not trying to show anybody that they're unbelievable fighters?
Oh, like kung fu guys?
Yeah.
No, those guys all get fucked up when they try to. They think they do it because you start believing it, and you have your students, and they believe you're the master. And
There's that Shaolin guy who
videos.
tried entering a
There's
bunch
a
of.
bunch of those videos.
Remember that guy with the orange Shaolin suit, and he would win in like these really hokey fight contests,
yeah.
and then he'd get into the big ones, and he'd just get the shit beat out of him.
Yeah, he was kickboxing. Yeah, he actually had some skills. Like he knew.
I used to watch his shit
Yeah,
on
he had
YouTube.
some. He could do a little bit, but what I'm talking about is like these chi masters. Like
Oh, those the ones where you put seems real or
those are so sad.
real as fuck.
Yeah,
You
they
put-
get beat up.
Yeah, McDojo. What is the McDojo Life on Instagram has a shitload of those.
Yeah, those make me laugh.
They're so sad.
Oh yeah, that's what you put seems legit.
Yeah, well, a lot of
Or
these
legit
guys,
as fuck.
they'll go and fight a real fighter, and they think they actually know how to fight, and they just get concussed. They just get smashed open. You know?
Because you know why? Because they don't get hit.
Yeah, they don't get hit.
That's
Yeah.
why I love boxing. Boxing, you spar all the time, you
Yep.
get hit all the time. So, in a real fight, boxers are being hit. Guys that do kung fu and all those things, they don't get hit. So when they do get hit in a real fight, it's like it messes them up. It's like, oh no, what do I do now?
Didn't see this coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, practical application. The difference between practicing and thinking. There's so many of these. Oh,
guys
what
are
is this guy
hilarious.
doing? I haven't seen this one. Is this a new one?
I just picked one that looked.
That guy in the black gi looks like he's gonna fuck this dude up.
That gi looks like the carpeting in my bedroom.
Oh my god. What are these guys? Are,
See the cheat? Did you see that?
Oh, it's.
Did you see that?
I wonder why they're wearing such weird gis. And look at everybody clapping. They really
How many
believe
black
that.
belts are in that class? God damn.
These silly fucks. They really believe that. I bet that guy can get him to suck his dick the same way.
I know people who really believe that their teacher can do that stuff.
Suck it.
Yeah. They're called priests.
How dare you? Yeah. It's weird that those people are still around in the day of video cameras, that you can still have this. But yeah, what you're saying is perfect. Like, even what you were saying, that if you hadn't fought in 2 years and then you would get in there and get hit, you're like, whoa, okay.
Like, see, I seen Keith Thurman do that.
Really?
That
was his last fight.
Yeah.
Yes, I saw
Lopez.
that too.
Yeah.
Yes,
And Lopez isn't a banger by any means.
he looked a little off though.
Yeah.
You know?
But Keith Thurman had to suffer through that one little concussion, concussed, I should say, and he was all right after that. If you hit him with that same shot, he would have took it even better.
Yeah.
Because he got over the hump.
I still give that fight to Lopez, though.
Oh,
Yeah.
A lot of people did. Yeah, it was a close fight
It
for
was a
sure.
close fight, yeah.
And you know, it was Thurman's big comeback fight. I mean, how long had he been out?
2 years at least.
Why was he injured?
He was injured. He had some sort of shoulder,
Operations.
elbow. Or,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, but that's also one of the things that makes it so interesting. You know, I mean, when a guy does come back from a devastating loss, and you go, okay, like Manny Pacquiao, when Marquez knocked him out. Woo! I mean, crazy.
That was a bad one.
That was a bad one.
Yeah,
that was a bad one.
That's
It's
going to
like-
cause some slurring later.
Maybe.
It's like, you make a move, it's a good move, but then you've moved into the man's power punch, and he hits you, and, there's no second chance with that one.
Yeah, and Marquez, I mean, he's an interesting case. You know, I mean, he's obviously a very, very talented fighter, but as he got older, he got physically stronger. He got bigger and stronger. You know, Mexican supplements.
Mexican meat.
A lot involved.
Clenbuterol meat.
Monkey juice.
There's a lot involved there, right? I mean, and he actually was working with Manny Pacquiao's old strength and conditioning guy. And Manny was the guy who was always accused of doing stuff.
Oh, you're talking about Alex Ariza?
Yeah. I mean, Manny went up 8 weight
I had
classes.
Alex Ariza train me before.
Yeah?
When I was doing my special 3 years ago.
Look at him. Jacked. Is he still fighting?
No, he's retired.
Marquez is done? Yeah. Good for him. They're talking about Floyd. They're talking about doing a Floyd Pacquiao rematch.
I'm not really excited about that.
You know what I'm excited about? I want to see how much money Floyd Mayweather can make. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I mean, like the fact that he talked everybody into that Conor McGregor fight, and he made more than $100 million for
Wait,
that
isn't
fight.
that Tenshin kid fighting again? He's fighting somebody else now.
Nazukawa? Yeah, he's a badass.
Yeah, no, but he's
kickboxer.
supposed to be fighting another.
Another boxer.
Yeah,
Oh, I think you're right.
probably
I
a
think that's
lesser
right.
one, but
Well, Tenshin is 126 pounds.
yeah. So he should fight somebody that's.
I mean,
nice.
the fact that he fought Mayweather at all, and people are like, oh, it looks like it was a fake fight. No, that's what it looks like when a 126-pound fighter fights one of the best boxers of all time.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. That doesn't look fake.
He did fall very dramatically.
Because he got his fucking brain rattled, you know?
Oh, is it
Gervonta
Gervonta? Yeah.
Davis? Oh, my
But
God.
Javante can't make that weight anymore either.
Well,
Javante
they're
can't
not
even
gonna-
make the weight he's at now.
But they don't have him make weight. That's the thing. They just have him fight. I mean, Floyd didn't make any fucking weight. Did he? What
Do you
weigh?
like the way ONE FC is doing their weight thing?
Yes,
That's
I like
pretty
it a
cool.
lot. Yeah, for people who don't know, they don't let them cut weight. They do hydration tests, so there's no dehydrating yourself. So if you weigh naturally, you walk around 185 pounds, you're going to fight at 185 pounds. You're not going to fight at 170 or 165 like a lot of these guys do.
That's good.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that's good because the hydration aspect of even in any sport, taking that liquid away from the brain.
Yeah.
Your body needs liquid.
Yeah.
It needs it survives on liquid.
And it makes your bones brittle.
It's terrible for you in every way. It's terrible for your performance, your internal organs. A lot of guys have kidney failure when they're cutting weight for weigh-ins. That's the beautiful thing about you being a heavyweight, right?
Yeah, man, I didn't have to take off my clothes. I can weigh whatever. But
Yeah.
there was always that fighting weight where I would be perfect at. Manny was good at that.
Yeah.
How much do you weigh? Okay, don't move anything. Don't move from there.
That's
what we
fighting
want.
weight was what, 240?
235.
235 was perfect. Knew you were on.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, what kind of nutrition did you follow when you were fighting? Did you take specific vitamins or did you drink specific things?
No, just Jamaican food.
Jamaican food.
Yeah. Angelo Dundee asked me that same question.
Yeah.
He said, "What do you eat?" I said, "My mother's food." He said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it."
That's a perfect Angelo Dundee quote.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's another one, man. Remember that with Sugar Ray Leonard against Thomas Hearns? "You're blowing it, kid."
Yeah.
And you see Sugar Ray Leonard get fired up, and he goes out and stops him the next round.
There was a lot of good trainers back then. Eddie Futch, Georgie Benton.
Yeah, Georgie Benton. Yeah. Bless his soul. Good trainer as well.
It's so important for a young fighter to get hooked up with the right trainer.
Right. You know, we got on that for a second. I think part of the problem with a lot of the young kids right now, they need to get good trainers.
Yeah.
Good trainers really help your game because it even helps you with the TV. Because I was saying today that when Emmanuel came into my corner, HBO started talking about me better. Before that, it was like, "Oh, he doesn't throw the jab enough. He looks like he's tired." The fight when I went with Manny, they were like praising me. "Oh, he's doing good now. Manny's behind him now. He's a trainer of champions." So, trainer really helps your game.
Were you with Manny when you fought Mercer?
Yes.
That was a war.
Yeah.
That was a war.
Actually, no, I wasn't. That Mercer fight, he actually taught. Mercer helped me out because before that fight, I was always fighting guys that hooked around, body shots and hooks. So I kept my hands like this at the side of my face. Then I went into that fight, got a fat lip. I hate getting fat lips in my fights. It's like, "Hey, did you win the fight?" "Yeah." "It didn't look like it. Where did you get a fat lip from?" So I kept on walking around with a fat lip, and then
I got a good picture of you. I got a good picture of you, me, and Lloyd, and you got a fat lip. It's right after one of your fights from like '97.
And then Manny said, "You know what you're doing wrong." He said, "You need to put your hand in front of your mouth." I'm like, "Okay." So even if a guy throws a punch which doesn't slide through, it's going to hit your hand. And he said, "You can move your hand 2 inches to protect yourself from a hook." I said, "Yeah." "Oh, okay, you're right." After that fight, no more fat lips. But I used to hate getting fat lips, boy. 'Cause everybody look at you funny.
That's hilarious. Well, but having a great trainer is so important in MMA as well. I mean, and there's not that many of them. It's like you really have to find the right ones.
A lot of good trainers are just former fighters now. Right?
Well, there's that, yeah. But someone has to be a real. They can't just be a trainer or just be a former fighter. Rather, you have to be a student to really understand the game. Like Emmanuel was only an amateur fighter, right? He never fought professional, and he was one of the greatest of all time, unquestionably.
Yeah.
Like everybody respected him. And so soft-spoken, and just knew how to raise fighters. And you think about all the guys, Gerald McClellan, Tommy Hearns, all the great fighters that came out of that camp.
The only problem I have with, old-time fighters is like, some old-time fighters were bad fighters. Now they're training a young kid the same way, and it's not positive.
Yes.
It's like you're teaching them bad tricks.
Yeah. But then there's guys who are better as trainers than they were as fighters, like Freddie Roach.
100%, yeah.
Like Freddie Roach is recognized one of the greatest trainers for sure alive, but as a fighter, he was a journeyman.
Kevin Rooney was a good trainer in his day.
Yeah.
And he got knocked out by Arguello in the second round.
Well, he was a good trainer with Tyson, but he never really developed talent outside of Tyson.
I think he's developed a lot of alcohol, that's why.
Oh, so, hanging around with Mike, and he's got tigers on a leash. And
then Buddy had a good run for a minute, Buddy McGurk.
He's still training fighters.
Yeah, I've trained with Buddy before.
Did you?
Yeah.
He was a great fighter.
Buddy was a great fighter.
Yeah.
Great dude.
You haven't trained with me yet.
What are you afraid of me, guy?
Listen, man, your phone keeps blowing up, and you were supposed to be out of here an hour ago. But I appreciate your time, man.
Thank you.
It was an honor to sit here and talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
One of my favorites of all time.
Appreciate
and
it.
Russell, I like you too.
Thanks, man. You're my favorite guy to get choked out by.
Sweetie, we're gonna have some fun tomorrow.
Jesus.
Lennox Lewis, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the show, and thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to the Cash App. Download the Cash App today from the App Store or the Google Play Market and use the referral code Joe Rogan, all one word. $5 will go to you, and $5 will go to support our good friend Justin Wren's Fight for the Forgotten charity, helping to build wells for the pygmies. I love this promotion, I love what it's done, and I love the fact that it's raised more than $100,000 to provide clean drinking water to more than 6,400 people in Uganda and Tanzania. It is wonderful. I'm very, very, very happy with that. So again, use the referral code Joe Rogan, all one word. You get $5, and $5 goes to an amazing cause. Thank you also to the So Right. I can't say enough good things about this. This is a product that I have used long before it was ever a sponsor. It was recommended to me by Michael Chandler. I have one in my house. I have one at the studio. I give them out to people. They're fucking awesome. And they're easy to carry around with you anywhere. And it really does help you release hard-to-get-at muscles. Use the promo code Joe Rogan, all one word, for 20% off at pso-rite.com. The So Right is already 20% off on so-right.com and on Amazon in the US. So with my code right now, you get an additional 20% off. 40% off, folks. It's not expensive to begin with, but it is valuable. Super, super valuable. Once you have one of those in your life, you're going to want to keep one. Thank you also to Casper, the mattress that young Jamie rests his head on at night. Oh, look how well he looks. How well slept. How well rested. You can get $50 towards select mattresses by visiting casper.com/Joe and using the promo code Joe at checkout. I'm telling you, you can't get a better mattress and you can't get a better price. And they're so confident that they're going to give you a 100-night risk-free sleep on it trial. That's how badass Casper is. Casper.com/Joe. And again, use the promo code Joe for $50 towards select mattresses. Oh, hello, friends. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the host of my website, joerogan.com, and it is an amazing platform where you can make your own website. I know what you're thinking. Dude, I can't. I don't know. Listen, if you got to do normal things on a computer, Squarespace has got it down. Or a dum-dum like me can make a beautiful professional website. All you have to do is use their gorgeous user templates and beautiful drag and drop user interface. It's so simple. If you know how to attach a photograph to an email, do you know how to do that? Okay. Do you know how to move files around on your desktop? Okay, you can do it. It's drag and drop. It's all simple. You can turn your cool idea into a new website. You can start a business. Maybe you make things, right? You're like, I wish I could sell them online. Well, you can. Each Squarespace website comes with a free online store. And everything is optimized for mobile right out of the box. They have analytics that help you grow in real time. And they have free and secure hosting, nothing to patch or upgrade ever, and 24/7 award-winning customer support. It's a beautiful platform, and it's the reason why joerogan.com is hosted on Squarespace. And here's the best part, ready? You try it for free. Head to squarespace.com/Joe for a free trial. Build that beautiful motherfucker. And then when you're ready to launch, use the offer code Joe to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Squarespace, I highly recommend them. We are also brought to you by the Cash App, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we've had the Cash App as a sponsor many, many times before, but one of the things I want to tell you about this, through the Cash App, okay, let me explain what the Cash App is. First of all, it's the #1 app in finance for a very good reason. It's a wonderful application that is not just a finance app, the easiest way for you to send and receive money, and you can even use it to buy and sell Bitcoin. But on top of that, the Cash App has something called the Cash Card. Now, the Cash Card is the most powerful debit card on the planet Earth, and the only one with boosts, a money-saving feature that you can't get anywhere else, because the Cash App invented it. You just select a boost in your Cash App, swipe your Cash Card, and you save 10% or more. Whole Foods, Shake Shack, Chipotle, Taco Bell, Chick-fil-A, Domino's, and coffee shops all across the country. The Coffee Shop Boost takes $1 off at any coffee shop, including Dunkin' or Starbucks. So you buy 500 cups of coffee a year, you save $500 with the Cash App. It's very simple. Download the Cash App from the App Store, the Google Play Market, order your Cash Card today. And when you download the Cash App, enter the referral code Joe Rogan, all one word. $5 goes to you, And $5 goes to our good friend Justin Wren's Fight for the Forgotten charity, which is helping to build wells for the pygmies in the Congo. And we are excited, extremely excited to share an update from Justin. To date, through this promotion, the Cash App and JRE listeners have raised over $100,000, providing clean drinking water to more than 6,400 people in Uganda and Tanzania. It's beautiful, folks. On top of that, some of the funds that have helped Fight for the Forgotten purchase land for the Batwa Pygmies in southwest Uganda, bringing 6 new water wells to that region. With the Cash App's help, Positive Image Video, the production company that actually shoots my comedy specials, will also be documenting Justin's efforts so that everyone can experience the journey. I could not be more pleased to be associated with this company, with what they're doing, and more pleased, I'm going to get choked up here, more pleased to be helping Justin, who I think is one of the best people I've ever met in my entire life. He's just a beautiful, selfless person. The guy's gotten malaria 3 times going over to Africa to build wells. I just love him to death. If you've listened to previous promotions, we also were donating money to help Ray Borg. We're very happy to announce that Ray Borg has been added to the March 30th UFC fight in Philadelphia. The Cash App was also donating money to help with his son's medical bills. So download the Cash App today, and again, use the referral code Joe Rogan, and you will help out a lot of people, including our good friend Justin Wren and his wonderful charity. I love that guy to death. Sorry if I'm getting choked up. I don't mean to sound like a bitch. We're also brought to you by ButcherBox. Yeah, don't sound like a bitch. Let's talk about meat. ButcherBox is a fantastic company that sends to you 100% grass-fed and finished beef, free-range, organic chicken, and heritage breed pork. And they send it to you right to your door on dry ice with free shipping anywhere in the lower 48. Unbelievable taste, folks. If you don't like to buy your food from a place where you don't know where it's coming from, get it from ButcherBox. First of all, everything is grass-fed and grass-finished. It's healthier for you, and it tastes better. These animals, they're pasture-raised, the way animals are supposed to live. And there's a different flavor to it. It looks different. They never have any antibiotics, no hormones, no nothing added to the meat. Now, outside of ButcherBox, this type of high-quality meat is very hard to find. And if you live in food deserts, it's nearly impossible. For those people who live in big cities with expensive supermarkets, the prices and variety at ButcherBox are hard to beat. And now they have wild Alaskan sockeye salmon, folks. They source their wild, sustainably harvested salmon from Bristol Bay, Alaska. And it's a deep, beautiful red, wild, never factory farmed. Now, you can get $20 off plus free ground beef for life. What? Yes, 2 pounds of free 100% grass-fed ground beef in every order for the lifetime of your subscription. Go to butcherbox.com, click on the banner, and enter the discount code Rogan at checkout. I cannot tell you enough how much I appreciate this company and the kind of service that they provide. For people that are having a hard time finding really high-quality meat, this is your go-to source. Butcherbox.com. Again, use the discount code Rogan at checkout. You get $20 off and free ground beef for life. Okay, now, boy, do I have a show for you today, folks. Okay, well, if you are a regular listener of this podcast, you know that I did a podcast a while back with Jack Dorsey from Twitter, and the response was positive and negative. But in the interest of dealing with the negative, we decided to have Jack back on, but this time with Tim Pool. Tim Pool's an independent journalist, and he's been heavily critical of Jack and of Twitter. And along with them, we brought in Vidya. I don't know how to say her last name. Jadde. Jade. I think it's Jade. Sorry, Vidya. Vidya I guess she's the head of their trust and safety committee. Is that correct? Either way, she provided us with some much needed insight as to why people get banned, when they get banned, what they're trying to do to alleviate the woes of censorship, give people a path to redemption. And, you know, Tim Pool, he goes hard in the paint. So he went hard in the paint. It was a great episode of the podcast. It's a long one. A lot to do with censorship, the implications of censorship, and I'm talking too much as it is. So please welcome Tim Pool, Jack Dorsey, and Vidya.
Joe Rogan Podcast, check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
During my day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
Live? All right. We're live, ladies and gentlemen. To my left, Tim Pool. Everybody knows and loves him. Vidya, what is it? How do I pronounce your last name?
Vidya Gatti.
Vidya, not Vidya. Vidya
Gatti.
And your position at Twitter is?
I lead trust and safety, legal, and public policy.
That's a lot. And Jack Dorsey, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you everybody for doing this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Feels all of a sudden there's tension in the room. We're all loose. We're all loosey-goosey just a few minutes ago.
Tension.
And everyone's like, oh, this is really happening. Here we go. Before we get started, we should say, because there were some things that people wanted to have us talk about. One, that the Cash App is one of the sponsors of the podcast. It's been a sponsor for a long time. And also a giant supporter of my good friend Justin Wren's Fight for the Forgotten charity, building wells for the pygmies in the Congo. This is very important to me, and I'm very happy that you guys are a part of that, and you are connected to that. I don't, it's easy for someone to say that doesn't have an influence on the way we discuss things, but it doesn't. So if it does, I don't know what to tell you.
I'm going to mention, too, just because I don't want people to come out and freak out later, I actually have like 80 shares in Square, which isn't really that much, but
it's something.
It is. So I don't want people to think, whatever. You're the CEO of Square, I think, right?
Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
We on the Cash App, so.
And the reason why we decided to come together is we had, I thought, a great conversation last time, but there was a lot of people that were upset that there were some issues that we didn't discuss in depth enough, or they felt that I didn't press you enough. I talked to Tim because, Tim and I have talked before, and he made a video about it, and I felt like his criticism was very valid. So we got on the phone and we talked about it, and I knew immediately within the first few minutes of the conversation that he was far more educated about this than I was. So I said, would you be willing to do a podcast and perhaps do a podcast with Jack? And he said, absolutely. So we did a podcast together. It was really well received. People felt like we covered a lot of the issues that they felt like I didn't bring up. And so then Jack and I discussed it. And we said, well, let's bring Tim on and then have Vidya on as well. I said that right?
Yep.
It's a hard one. Sorry, I'll get it right. I promise. So we're here. We're here. Today, do you know who Sean Baker is? He's a doctor who's a prominent proponent of the carnivore diet. His account was frozen today. I just sent it to you, Jamie. Yeah. His account was frozen today because of an image that he had, because he's a proponent of the carnivore diet. There's a lot of people that believe that this elimination diet is very healthy for you, and it's known to cure a lot of autoimmune issues with certain people, but some people ideologically oppose it because they think it's bad for the environment, or you shouldn't eat meat, or whatever the reasons are.
This is huge in the Bitcoin community.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's for a lot of people that have autoimmune issues, particularly psoriasis and arthritis. It is a lifesaver. It's crazy. It's essentially it's an autoimmune issue. So because he has a photo of a lion in a header eating looks like a wildebeest or something like that, his account was locked for violating his rules against graphic violence or adult content in profile images. That seems a little silly, and I wanted to just mention that right away. Now, whose decision is something like that? Like, who decides to lock a guy's account out because it has a nature image of, natural predatory behavior?
In this particular case, it's probably an algorithm that detected it and made some sort of an assessment. But as a general rule, how we operate as a company is we rely on people to report information to us. So if you look at any tweet, you can kind of pull down on the caret on the right and you can say report the tweet, and then you have a bunch of categories you can choose from what you want to report. I think this one in particular, though, is probably an algorithm.
So how does he have the option to protest that or to ask someone to review it?
Absolutely, and I'm guessing that people are already reviewing it, but there's a choice to appeal any action, and that would go to a human to make sure that it is actually a violation of the rules or in this case, if it's not, then it would be removed.
Is that a violation of the rules? That image?
I don't think so. I don't think that that would be what we're trying to capture in terms of graphic images in an avatar. It's more about violence towards humans, unless it was some sort of cruelty depicting animals or something like that. But this seems not the intention of the rule.
Does this is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up immediately. Does this highlight a flaw in the system in that people can target an individual? Because with him, like I said, he's a doctor and a proponent of this carnivore diet, but he's also ruthless in his condemnation and mocking of vegans. He does it all the time. And so then they get upset at him, and they can target posts and just report them en masse. And when they do that, then this becomes an issue.
I think this does reveal part of, the challenges that we face as a global platform at scale. In this, I don't know what happened in this case, so it's hard for me to talk about it. But what I would say is that it doesn't really matter if one person reports it or 10,000 people report it. Like, we're going to review the reports and we're going to make an assessment, and we're never going to, kick someone off the platform finally and forever without a person taking a look and making sure that it's an actual violation of the rules.
Right. Okay. So,
but the mob reporting behavior does happen.
Yeah, it does.
It happens across the spectrum.
I'd have to assume it's going to be one direction. I can't imagine he would target vegans, but vegans would target him, right?
Well, he might. I mean, he doesn't. But
is he the kind of guy who's going to want to report to vegans and get them banned from Twitter, or is he going to want to make fun of them?
He's going to make fun of them. Yeah.
They're going to target him to try and get him removed by exploiting the system that you guys have.
It may not be him, though. It could also be his followers. It's a really complicated world out there, so you don't. The motivations of why people mob report are different, and it's not always under someone's control.
It could even be other carnivore diet proponents who are just jerks who don't like him because he's getting all the love. People are weird.
Yeah,
but it's just
true.
The idea, though, is that it does kind of highlight a bit of a flaw in that it's good that someone can, like, you might see something awful, someone doxing someone or something like that, and then you can take that and report it, and then people can see it and get rid of it and minimize the damage that's done.
Well, there's another big problem here in that, is the carnivore diet legitimately healthy? Is it a threat to your health? And if it is what is Twitter's responsibility in controlling that information? Right. So just to clarify, my opinion is, if he wants to be a proponent for the carnivore diet, let him. But you've got people on YouTube who are being deranked for certain beliefs about certain health issues that I don't agree with. And so one of the risks then is, we're coming towards a position where people think some ideas are better than others, therefore as a company we're going to restrict access to certain information.
You mean like anti-vax?
Exactly.
People?
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm trying to say is, at what point would you guys restrict someone from sharing false information about vaccines that could get someone hurt?
That is not a violation of Twitter's rules. No.
I think, I'd be interested to hear your ideas around this, but our perspective right now is around this concept of variety perspective. Like, are we encouraging more echo chambers and filter bubbles, or are we at least showing people other information that might be counter to what they see? And there's a bunch of research that would suggest that further emboldens their views. There's also research that would suggest that it at least gives them a consideration about what they currently believe. So,
you guys,
given the dynamics of our network being completely public, we're not organized around communities, we're not organized around topics. We have a little bit more freedom to show more of the spectrum of any one particular issue, and I think that's how we would approach it from the start. That said, we haven't really dealt much with misinformation more broadly across these sorts of topics. We've focused our efforts on elections and mainly election training.
YouTube is a different animal. YouTube,
is.
someone can really convince you that the Earth is flat if you're gullible and you watch a 45-minute YouTube video.
Right.
It's kind of a different thing.
But I wanted to just kind of get into that statement you made about misinformation and whether or not you'll police it.
So I think that the tough part of this is really, and love to have a discussion about this, is do you really want corporations to police what's true and not true?
Absolutely not.
That's a really, really tough position.
But you guys think that.
We try not to do that. We don't want to do that.
But you do in your rules.
But the places that we focus on is where we think that people are going to be harmed by this in a direct and tangible way that we feel a responsibility to correct.
What do you say in your rules, Tim? What do you mean by that?
Dead naming and misgender.
Dead naming and misgender.
Yeah. That's a specific ideology that's unique to a very small faction of people in this world that you guys actually banned people for.
So the way I think of it is it's behavior based, and I know you think of it as content, and we can disagree on this point. But this is about, why are you doing this to a trans person? Why are you calling them by this name when they've chosen to go by a different name? Or why are you outing them in some way? Like, what is your intent and purpose behind that?
I don't mean to interrupt, but in the interest of clarity, I wanted to just explain what dead naming means.
Right.
So,
a transgender individual changes their name when they transition. The dead name would be their birth name or the name they went by before the transition. So,
because my mom's probably going, what? And ready for the text. What's a dead name?
And I will clarify too. Your rules specifically say targeted misgendering and dead naming, I believe. Is correct, right?
So years ago, we passed a policy that we call our hateful conduct policy, and that prohibits targeting or attacking someone based on their belonging in any number of groups, whether it's because of their religion or their race or their gender, their sexual orientation, their gender identity. So it was something that's broad-based, is that you can't choose to attack people because of these characteristics.
But you do have limits on what characteristics you police, right? So you're not banning people for targeted trans-species encounters, right?
Well, we have also general abuse and harassment rules, right? Which says you can't engage in abuse and harassment on the platform.
But you can't dead name someone, but you can call them stupid.
Generally, I mean, if you created an account that only was there to call the same person stupid 5,000 times, we probably view that as
targeted harassment.
Targeted harassment.
Right. It's a function of behavior. Like because people with our system can do this in massive velocity.
So
which would ultimately silence you from the platform, or just say like, I give up. I don't want to deal with this thing. I'm out.
Also, we can just get into all of the big examples. I mean. Starting with me.
I'd love to, Tim, but can we just take a step back and try to level set what we're trying to do with our policies?
Sure.
Because I think it's worth doing.
Yes.
So, as a high level, I personally, and this is my job to run the policy team, I believe that everyone has a voice and should be able to use it, and I want them to be able to use it online. Now, where we draw a line is when people use their voice and use their platform to abuse and harass other people to silence them. Because I think that that's what we've seen over the years, is a number of people who have been silenced online because of the abuse and harassment they've received, and they either stop talking or they leave the platform in its entirety. If you look at free expression and free speech laws around the world, they're not absolute. They're not absolute. There's always limitations on what you can say, and it's when you're starting to endanger other people.
So my question then is, when I was physically threatened on Twitter, you guys refused to take down the tweet. And I showed up in Berkeley and someone physically threatened me because they were encouraged to. When I was in Venezuela, I was physically threatened by a high-profile individual, 10,000 people tweeting at me, you guys do nothing, right? So I guess there's the obvious question of why does it always feel like your policies are going one direction politically? You say it's about behavior, you said it several times already, but I've got a ton of examples of that not being the case.
And you will always be able to find those examples.
Yeah, examples where you guys were alerted multiple times and did nothing, like when Antifa doxed a bunch of law enforcement agents. Some of the tweets were removed, but since September, this tweet is still live with a list of private phone numbers, addresses, yet Kathy Griffin, she's fine. The guy who threatened the lives of these kids in Covington and said, lock them in the school and burn it down, you did nothing. I mean, he got suspended, he had to take his tweets down. Was he banned for threatening the lives of kids? Absolutely not.
So, again, we have, and I'm happy to talk about all these details, we have our policies that are meant to protect people. And they're meant to enable free expression as long as you're not trying to silence somebody else. Now, we take a variety of different enforcement mechanisms around that. Sometimes you get warned, sometimes your tweet is forced to be deleted. It's a very rare occasion where we will outright suspend someone without any sort of warning or any sort of ability to understand what happened.
What did you guys do with Kathy Griffin when she was saying she wanted the names of those young kids wearing the MAGA hats at the Covington High School kids?
Yeah, that's a great example, Joe. So in that particular case, our doxing policy really focuses on posting private information, which we don't consider names to be private. We consider your home address, your home phone number, your mobile phone number, those types of things to be private. So in that particular case, we took what I think now is probably a very literal interpretation of our policy and said that that was not a doxing incident.
Do you think that was an error?
I think that it was short-sighted, and given the context of what was going on there, that if I was doing this all over again, I would probably ask my team to look at that through the lens of what was the purpose behind that tweet. And if the purpose was, in fact, to identify these kids to either dox them or abuse and harass them, which it probably was, then we should be taking a more expansive view of that policy and including that type of content.
Especially considering the fact they're minors. I mean, I would think that right away that would be the approach. So this is a trial and error, sort of learn and move on with new information sort of deal.
Absolutely. We're going to learn. We're going to make a ton of mistakes. We're trying to do this with hundreds of millions of accounts all around the world, numerous languages. We're going to make mistakes. Even if we get better, there will always be mistakes. But we're hoping to learn from those and to make ourselves better and to catch cases like Tim's or others where we clearly may have made an error. And I'm open to having those discussions. I'm sorry, Tim, familiar with your specific cases, but I'd love to follow up with you and really try to understand.
But I think
see the tweet?
We definitely pull that up.
So it's bit.ly/Antifa tweet, all lowercase.
This is also an evolution in prioritization as well. One of the things we've come to recently is we do need to prioritize these efforts, both in terms of policy, enforcement, how we're thinking about resolving them. One of the things that we want to focus on as number one is physical safety. And this leads you immediately to something like doxing. And right now, the only way we take action on a doxing case is if it's reported or not. What we want to move to is to be able to recognize those in real time, at least in the English language, recognize those in real time through our machine learning algorithms, and take the action before it has to be reported. So we're focused purely right now on going after doxing cases with our algorithms so that we can be proactive. That also requires a much more rigorous appeals process to correct us when we're wrong. But we think it's tightly scoped enough that it impacts the most important thing, which is someone's physical safety. Once we learn from that, we can really look at the biggest issue with our system right now is all the burden is placed upon the victim. So we only act based on reports. We don't have a lot of enforcement, especially with more of the takedowns that are run through machine learning, deep learning algorithms.
But if something is reported, a human does review it eventually, or are there a series of reports that can never get to?
There's probably reports we don't. I mean, we prioritize the queue based on severity, and the thing that will mark severity is something like physical safety or private information and whatnot. So generally, we try to get through everything, but we have to prioritize that queue even coming in.
So if someone threatened the lives of someone else, would you ban that account? Would you tell them, like let's say someone tweeted 3 times, kill these people, I want them dead, 3 times. Is that?
Yes, that's a violation.
You didn't ban them?
Let's pull that up, Jamie.
That's I don't necessarily want to give out specific usernames because then people just point the finger at me and say I'm getting these people banned. But during Covington, this guy said multiple times he wanted his followers to go and kill these kids.
Yeah, and we have to look at that, but we also have to look in the context because we also have. I think we talked about this a little bit in the last podcast, but we have gamers on the platform who are saying exactly that to their friends that they're going to meet at the game tonight. And without the context of that relationship, without the context of the conversation that we're having, we would take the exact same action on them incorrectly.
Yeah, absolutely. That I understand. I think in the case of Covington, though, this user was so high profile. He's a verified user. He's got something like 20,000 followers. And it was highlighted by numerous conservative media outlets saying, wow, it's screenshotted, it's being shared. I mean, you had a Disney producer saying a picture of a wood chipper with a body being thrown in it, saying that's what he wanted to happen. So I do know that some of these accounts got locked.
A Disney producer was doing that?
I'll clarify. Fact check me on that. But that's basically the conversation that was happening. There's a guy at Disney he posted a picture from Fargo of someone being tossed in a wood chipper, and he says, "I want all these MAGA kids, done like this." You had another guy who specifically said, "Lock them in the school, burn it down." Said a bunch of disparaging things, and then said, "If you see them, fire on them." And he tweeted that more than once.
And those tweets were taken down. Those were violations of our rules.
I'm pretty sure it's actually illegal to do that, right? It's to tell any individual to commit a felony is a crime, right?
Well, incitement of violence is certainly a crime in many places.
I just have to wonder how I understand the context issue, but this is what I talk.
Well, there's context and scale too, though. Right.
But Tim, those accounts were actioned. They may not have been actioned the way you wanted them to, but the tweets were forced to be deleted, and the account took a penalty for that. So
I understand that.
What kind of a penalty?
Well, again, as I said earlier, Joe, we don't usually automatically suspend accounts with one violation because we want people to learn. We want people to understand what they did wrong and give them an opportunity not to do it again.
Right.
And it's a big thing to kick someone off the platform, and I take that very, very seriously. So I want to make sure that when someone violates our rules, they understand what happened, and they're given an opportunity to, get back on the platform and change their behavior. And so in many of these cases, what happens is we will force someone to acknowledge that their tweet violated our rules, force them to delete that tweet before they can get back on the platform. And in many cases, if they do it again, we give them a timeout, which is like 7 days, and we say, look, you've done it again.
Suspension.
It's a temporary suspension. If you do it
timeout, you're a mom.
I'm totally a mom, exactly. And
a new mom too.
And if you do it again, then you're done.
Right.
So it's kind of like, 3 strikes. So sort of like baseball. And so in some of these cases that Tim's referencing, I have to imagine, because these tweets were deleted, they are violations of our rules. People are upset that the account came back again and was allowed to say other things, but we did take action on those tweets. They were violations of our rules.
And then you have people like Milo, who was mean to a person, and you banned him permanently.
There's a little more to that.
Actually, Tim, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm happy to talk about Milo, and I actually brought the tweets because.
Well, so let's preface that by saying the point I want to make sure is clear is that you had somebody who actively called for the death of people. I understand the context issue. Maybe he's talking about video games, but and scale. So this is a verified user.
And that's just the complexity in acting. But it's not an excuse for why we didn't do it in different ways.
Right.
And then
there are a lot of other examples too that get into more egregious areas that I've prepared. So here we have someone with over 20,000 followers. He's verified numerous times, incites his followers to commit a crime against these kids. The action taken against him is delete the tweets, you get a suspension, you get timeout. Then you have people like Alex Jones, who berated a CNN reporter, permanently banned. You get Milo Yiannopoulos, he was mean, permanently banned.
But that's your impression. That's not what happened.
Okay,
and I'm here to talk about the details if you want to.
Let's do this one at a time.
Yeah.
Let's start with Milo. So what was the details with Milo?
So Milo had a number of tweets that violated our rules going back to 2014. But I'm going to talk about the final 3 in this 3-strike concept. He claimed to be a BuzzFeed reporter in his bio. And he's a verified account, so that is impersonation. I'm not sure why he did that. He did do that.
Well, BuzzFeed's a left-wing thing, so he was doing parody.
Potentially, but our parody rules are very specific. That if you have an account that's is a parody account, you need to say that it is a parody account, so you don't confuse people.
But everybody who knows Milo would know that he's not a BuzzFeed reporter.
But people who don't know Milo will look at that verified account and say.
But he wasn't verified after a while. You removed his verification.
Because he violated our rules around verification.
So the verification was removed because of the BuzzFeed thing?
I believe so. I can confirm that, but I believe so. He also doxed someone. He posted private information about an individual. So that was the second one. He tweeted to somebody else, if you were my child, I'd have dashed your head on a rock and tried again, which we viewed as a threat.
Really? That seems like he's saying, like, your mom should have swallowed you. It's like, you know what I'm saying? He's like, you're a mistake. I don't think that's a threat.
I understand why reasonable people would have different impressions of this. I'm just going through and telling you what they are, just so we can have all the facts on the table, and then we can debate them. And then the last one, we found a bunch of things that he posted that we viewed as incitement of abuse against Leslie Jones. So there's a bunch of them, but the one that I like to look at, which really convinced me, is he posted 2 doctored tweets that were supposedly by Leslie Jones. They were fake tweets. The first one said, white people are getting on my nerves, like how can you call yourself human? And then the second one said, the goddamn slur for a Jewish person at Sony ain't paid me yet, damn Vix nude better pay up.
So this was just a fake tweet that someone had photoshopped? Two fake
tweets. And we know they were faked because we could still tell from the software that they were faked. You can't always tell.
So it is possible that he didn't know they were faked?
It's possible.
That someone sent it to him and he didn't do his due diligence in looking it up? And
it is possible, but it was pointed out to him that they were fake because...
And he left it on?
And not only did he leave it on, he said, don't tell me some mischievous internet rascal made them up! ! So this in the context of a bunch of other things he was saying towards Leslie Jones on Twitter, I and my team felt that this was taken as a whole incitement of harassment against her.
Wasn't there another issue with multiple accounts that were connected to him?
There were a bunch of other issues on the background, but these are the 3 primary things that we looked at in terms of...
But the other things that were in the background, weren't they multiple accounts that were connected to him? Like,
I think that I'm not sure about that, Joe. I think that it was more that we found him to be engaging in coordinated behavior and inciting people to attack Leslie Jones.
Now, with a case like him, no, I'm just going to be honest. And I'm listening to those or listening to read those tweets. They don't sound that bad, and they certainly don't sound as bad as calling for the death of a child who's wearing a MAGA hat, throw him into a wood chipper. The fact that that guy's still out there tweeting, and yet Milo's not. Milo's the whole thing stemmed from, other than the BuzzFeed thing, stemmed from his legitimate criticism of a film. And he's a satirist. He was mocking this film.
The doxing incident wasn't related
the
to
doxing incident.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
why don't we...
But the
And
Leslie
I
Jones
hope we
stuff.
all agree that doxing is something
Yes.
that Twitter should take action on.
100%.
And it can
Yes.
threaten people in real life. And I take an enormous amount of responsibility for that, because I fear daily for the things that are happening on the platform that are translating into the real world.
So, Milo is a contentious figure, and there's certainly things you can pull up that I wouldn't agree with anything he did there. I think those are horrible. I think Joe brought up some really good points, but what about Chuck Johnson? Why was Chuck Johnson banned?
I don't have those details.
Chuck Johnson said that he was preparing something to take out DeRay McKesson, and in a journalistic context, people take this to mean he was going to do a dossier or some kind of hit piece on DeRay. He was permanently banned. My understanding, and it's been a long time since I've read this, there was some leaked emails, I think, from Dick Stoller, where he said, maybe it wasn't Dick, I don't want to direct Dick, I don't know who it was exactly, where they said, I don't care, just get rid of him. And he was off. So you have, and again, maybe there's some hidden context there, I don't know. But on the surface,
the concern is that this is always leaning towards the left.
Oh, it absolutely is, and I'm not even getting started.
Yeah.
I can understand why you feel that way. I don't think that's true. I think we look at each individual instance of violations of our rules and try to make the best case that we can.
Right,
and I'm not trying, and I do think, Joe, just to say, I do think we've failed in a couple of ways, and I want to admit that.
Okay.
Number one, we haven't done enough education about what our rules are. Because a lot of people violate our rules and they don't even know it. Like some of the statistics that we've looked at, like for a lot of first-time users of the platform, if they violate the rule once, almost 2/3 of them never violate the rules again. So we're not talking about like a bunch of people accidentally. Like if they know what the rules are, most people can avoid it.
And most people, when they feel the sting of a violation, they go, okay, I don't want to lose my rights to post.
Exactly, and they're able to do it. So we have
Okay.
a lot of work to do on education, so people really understand what the rules are in the first place. The other thing we have to do to address these allegations that we're doing this from a biased perspective is to be really clear about what types of behavior are caught by our rules and what types are not, and to be transparent within the product. So when a particular tweet is found to be in violation of our rules, being very, very clear, like this tweet was found to be in violation of this particular rule. And that's all work that we're doing. So we think the combination of education and transparency is really important, particularly for an open platform like Twitter. It's just part of who we are, and we have to build it into the product.
I appreciate that. Your particular thoughts, though, on those examples that he described, when you're talking about someone saying they should throw these children into a wood chipper versus Chuck Johnson saying he should take this guy, he wants to prepare a dossier to take this guy out, or how did he say it?
He said something like, I'm going to take out DeRay McKesson with, he said, I'm preparing to take out DeRay, something like that, I can't remember.
Preparing to take him out.
I can understand.
So it could be misconstrued as he was trying to assassinate him.
Right.
You could misconstrue it that.
But not a direct threat.
But the other one's a direct threat. One guy is banned for life, the other guy is still posting.
And we can, I'm happy to follow up, I just don't have all the Chuck Johnson. It's not about one thing, as I said. It's about a pattern and practice of violating our rules. And we don't want to kick someone off for one thing. But if there's a pattern in practice, like there was for Milo, we are going to have to take action at some point, because we can't sit back and let people be abused and harassed and silenced on the platform.
Well, so one really important thing that needs to be stated is that Twitter, by definition, is a biased platform in favor of the left, period. It's not a question. I understand you might have your own interpretation, but it's very simple. Conservatives do not agree with you on the definition of misgendering. If you have a rule in place that specifically adheres to the left ideology, you, by default, are enforcing rules from a biased perspective.
Well, Tim, there are a lot of people on the left who don't agree with how we're doing our job either.
For sure.
And those people think that we don't take enough action on abuse and harassment, and we let far too much behavior go. And they think
but that's
Twitter,
a radical example, though. I mean, what he's talking about, I mean, in terms of generalities, that in general, things lean far more left. Would you agree to that?
I don't know what that means.
But in this particular case, it's how the speech is being used. This is a new vector of attack that people have felt that I don't want to be on this platform anymore because I'm being harassed and abused and I need to get the hell out.
Well, people harass and abuse me all day and night. You don't do anything about that. My notifications permanently locked at 99. You have it worse than I do. I mean, you got substantially more followers. And I don't click the notification tab anymore because it's basically just harassment. And so this is a really funny anecdote. I was covering a story in Berkeley, and someone said, if you see him, attack him. Like, it was, I'm paraphrasing, they said, basically to swing at me, take my stuff, steal from me. And Twitter told me after review it was not a violation of their policy. Somebody made an allusion to me being a homosexual, and I reported that, instantly gone. So when so for me, I'm like, well, of course Twitter is going to enforce the social justice aspect of their policy immediately. In my opinion, probably because you guys have PR constraints and you're probably nervous about that. But when someone actually threatens me with a crime and incites their followers to do it, nothing got done.
Well,
and I'm not the only one who feels that way.
Well, Tim, that's a mistake. If someone acts in that manner and threatens to hurt you, that's a violation of our rules.
Right.
Maybe there was a mistake there, and I'm happy to go and correct that, and we can do it offline so we don't fear any sort of reprisal against you. But that's a mistake. That's not an agenda on my part or on the team's part.
Would this be a manual?
We don't have any PR constraints. That is not how.
So why did you ban Alex Jones?
We can get into that.
You want to get into that?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So are you ready for Alex Jones?
Sure.
All right.
Oh, I'm good ready for Alex Jones.
Well, let me say this. The reason I bring him up is that Oliver Darcy, one of the lead reporters covering Alex Jones and his content, said on CNN that it was only after media pressure did these social networks take action. So that's why I bring him up specifically, because it sort of implies you were under PR constraints to get rid of him.
I think if you look at the PR that Twitter went through in that incident, it wouldn't be that we looked good in it.
You have to
and that's not at all why we took action on it.
Sorry, but you have to look at the full context and the spectrum, because one of the things that happened over a weekend is what Alex mentioned on your podcast with him. He was removed from the iTunes podcast record. That was the linchpin for him, because it drove all the traffic to what he said basically zero. Immediately after that, we saw our peer companies, Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, also take action. We did not. We did not, because when we looked at our service, when we looked at the reports on our service, we did not find anything in violation of our rules. Then we got into a situation where suddenly a bunch of people were reporting content on our platform, including CNN, who wrote an article about all the things that might violate our rules that we looked into, and we gave him one of the warnings, and then we can get into the actual details. But we did not follow. We resisted just being like a domino with our peers, because it wasn't consistent with our rules and the contract we put in before our customers.
So what was it that made you ban them?
So there were 3 separate incidents that came to our attention after the fact that were reported to us by different users. There was a video that was uploaded that showed a child being violently thrown to the ground and crying. That was the first one. The second one was a video that we viewed as incitement of violence. I can read it to you. It's a little bit of a transcript, but now it's time to act on the enemy before they do a false flag. I know the Justice Department's crippled, a bunch of followers and cowards, but there's groups, there's grand juries, you called for it. It's time politically, economically, and judiciously, and legally, and criminally to move against these people. It's got to be done now. Get together the people you know aren't traitors, aren't cowards, aren't helping their frickin' bets, hedging their frickin' bets like all these other assholes do, and let's go, let's do it. So people need to have and then there's a bunch of other stuff, but at the end, so people need to have their battle rifles ready and everything ready at their bedsides. And you've got to be ready, because the media is so disciplined.
So this is, you're saying that this is a call to violence against the media?
That's what it sounded like to us at the time. And there have been a number of incidents of violence against the media. And again, I take my responsibility for what happens on the platform and how that translates off platform very seriously. And that felt like it was incitement to violence.
So if he only tweeted the incitement to violence, it would have been fine. If he only tweeted that posted that transcript saying "Get your battle rifles ready," you wouldn't have deleted his account.
Again, context matters to me. It's not about one thing. So we'd have to look at the entire context of what's going on.
So I'm asking, was that egregious enough for you to say that alone?
That was just
number 2.
Right. So then I guess the question is, what was the video context of the kid being thrown to the ground? Was it newsworthy?
We obviously didn't think so, and depicting violence against a child is not something that we would allow on the platform.
Even if it's news content?
If it was, there are certain types of situations where if you were reporting on war zone and things that might be happening, we would put an interstitial on that type of content that's graphic or violent, but we didn't feel that was the context here.
Well, so here's a video that's been going around, that was going around 4 or 5 weeks ago, the one where the girls were yelling at that big giant guy and the guy punched that girl in the face and she was like 11 years old. I saw that multiple times on Twitter. It was one of the most violent things I've ever seen. This giant man punched this 11-year-old girl in the face. And that was that removed from Twitter?
I don't know. I would have to go see if anyone reported it to us.
I think one of the issues here is, too, is, do
you want me to get to the third one?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So the third strike that we looked at was a verbal altercation that Alex got into with a journalist, and in that altercation, which was uploaded to Twitter, there were a number of statements using eyes of the rat, even more evil-looking person, he's just scum, you're a virus to America and freedom, smelling like a possum that climbed out of the rear end of a dead cow. You look like a possum that got caught doing some really, really nasty stuff in my view. There was a bunch of
That's enough? Really? That's hilarious.
Pattern and practice, but it was a verbal altercation that was posted on our platform. So we took the totality of this, having been warned that we have rules against the abuse and harassment of individuals. We saw this pattern in practice. 1 strike, 2 strikes, 3 strikes, and we made a decision to permanently.
And so that last one was on Periscope, is that what it was that he broadcast to?
I think it was originally on Periscope, but it was also reposted from multiple related accounts onto Twitter.
So we can agree with you when you say these things, like, Alex said this sounds like a threat, he was berating this person, saying awful things, but ultimately your judgment is the context. You say we have to pay attention to the context. We're just trusting that you made the right decision.
Well, I'm giving you as much facts as I can give you here, and I think that this is the real hard part of content moderation at scale on global platforms. It's not easy, and I don't think Jack or I would tell you that it's easy.
It's a preposterous volume that you guys have to deal with, and that's one of the things that I wanted to get into with Jack when I first had him on, because what my thought, and I wasn't as concerned about the censorship as many people were. My main concern was, what is it like to start this thing that's kind of for fun, and then all of a sudden it becomes the premier platform for free speech on the planet Earth? Which is...
It is that, but it's also a platform that's used to abuse and harass a lot of people, and used in ways that none of us want it to be used, but nonetheless it happens. And I think it's an enormously complicated challenge for any company to do content moderation at scale, and that's something that we are sitting down thinking about. How do we take this forward? Because this is...
So let's take the other context now. We've heard what you said about what Alex Jones did was bad, and now we can look at it this way. Oliver Darcy, who has on numerous occasions insulted conservatives, recently on CNN called them gullible, being sold red meat by grifters, repeatedly covers a story. I'm going to do air quotes because I think to an extent he's allowed to cover these stories. He keeps going after Alex Jones. He keeps digging through his history. Then he goes on TV and says, we got him banned. Then Alex Jones confronts him in a very aggressive and mean way, and that's your justification or I should say, I invert the timeline. Basically, you have someone who's relentlessly digging through your stuff, insulting you, calling you names, sifting through your history, trying to find anything they can to get you terminated, going on TV, even writing numerous stories. You confront them and say, you're evil, and you say a bunch of really awful, mean things, and then you ban him, right?
And then you post that information all over the internet.
Right, but you have a journalist who recently went on TV and said CPAC is a bunch of gullible conservatives being fed red meat by grifters. You can tell this guy's not got an honest agenda. So what you have, to me it looks like, the conservatives, to an extent, probably will try and mass flag people on the left. But from an ideological standpoint, you have the actual, whatever people want to call it, sect of identitarian left, that believe free speech is a problem, that have literally shown up in Berkeley burning free speech signs, and then you have conservatives who are tweeting mean things. And the conservatives are less likely, I think it's fair to point out, less likely to try and get someone else banned because they like playing off them, and the left is targeting them. So you end up having disproportionate...
I feel like there are a lot of assumptions in what you're saying, and I don't know what basis you're saying those things.
You have conservatives demanding free speech, and you have liberals, I shouldn't say liberals, you have what people refer to as the regressive left, calling for the restrictions on speech. You have these...
I don't know what those terms mean, to be honest with you. We have people on all sides of the spectrum who believe in free speech, and I believe that to be the case.
So your platform restricts speech.
Our platform promotes speech unless people violate our rules.
And in a specific direction.
in any direction.
But Uncle, I don't want to say his name, the guy who calls for death gets a suspension, the guy who insinuates death gets a permanent ban.
But Tim, you're misinterpreting what I'm saying, and I feel like you're doing it deliberately. It's not about one particular thing. It's about a pattern and practice of violating our
And you
rules.
have a pattern and practice of banning only one faction of people.
I don't agree with that.
Recently published an article where they looked at 22 high-profile bannings from 2015 and found 21 of them were only on one side of the cultural debate.
But I don't look at the political spectrum of people when I'm looking at their tweets.
Right, you have a bias.
I don't know who they are.
You're biased, and you're targeting specific individuals because your rules support this perspective.
No, I don't agree with that.
Well,
Can you be clear though in like what rules support that perspective?
Specifically, the easiest one is misgendering, right? Because that's so clearly ideological. If you ask a conservative, what is misgendering? They'll say if someone is biologically male, and you call them, she. A biologically male, and you call them a she, that's misgendering. That's a conservative view. The progressive view is inverted. So now you actually have in your policies a rule against the conservative perspective.
I have a rule against the abuse and harassment of trans people on our platform. That's what my rules.
Can we just give context in the background as to why
that is? And I brought some research. So we obviously received a lot of feedback. So we don't make these rules in a vacuum, just to be clear. We have a bunch of people all around the world who give us context on the types of behavior they're seeing, how that translates into real-world harm, and they give us feedback. And they tell us, like, you should consider different types of rules, different types of perspectives, different, like, for example, when we try to enforce hateful conduct in a hateful conduct policy in a particular country, we're not going to know all the swear words that are used to target people of a particular race or particular religion. So we're going to rely on building out a team of experts all around the world who are going to help us enforce our rules. So in the particular case of misgendering, I'm just trying to pull up some of the studies that we looked at, but we looked at the American Association of Pediatrics and looked at the number of transgender youths that were committing suicide. It's an astronomical, I'm sorry, I can't find it right now in front of me. It's a really, really high statistic. That's like 10 times what the normal suicide rate is of normal teenagers. And we looked at the causes of what that was happening. And a lot of it was not just violence towards those individuals, but it was bullying behavior. And what were those bullying behaviors that were contributing to that? And that's why we made this rule. Because we thought, and we believe, that those types of behaviors were happening on our platform, and we wanted to stop it. Now, there are exceptions to this rule. We don't, and this isn't about like public figures, and there's always going to be public figures that you're going to want to talk about, and that's fine. But this is about, are you doing something with the intention of abusing and harassing a trans person on the platform, and are they viewing it that way and reporting it to us so that we take action?
So I will just state, I actually agree with the rule. From my point of view, I agree that bullying and harassing trans people is entirely wrong. I disagree with it. But I just want to make sure it's clear to everybody who's listening. My point is simply that, Ben Shapiro went on a talk show and absolutely refused. And that's his shtick, and he's one of the biggest podcasts in the world. So if you have all of his millions upon millions of followers who are looking at this rule saying this goes against my view of the world, and it's literally 60 plus million in this country, you do have a rule that's ideologically bent. And it's true. You did the research, you believe this. Well, then you have Ben Shapiro who did his research and doesn't believe it.
Yeah, and I relied on the American Association of Pediatrics and Human Rights Council and other.
And I'm sure he has his sources too for when he gives his statements. The point is,
but I just wonder if they have that context. And that's where we have also failed, as well as just explaining the why behind a lot of our policy and reasons.
I would agree, and I think it's fine. You did research and you found this to be true, but we can't simply say maybe Ben Shapiro and the other conservatives who feel this way don't know. We can't. The point I'm trying to make is it's simply whether you believe it, whether you justify it or not is not the point. The point is you do have this rule. That rule is at odds with conservatives. Period.
Well, I think that you're generalizing, but I think it is really important, as Jack said, to the why behind these things. The why is to protect people from abuse and harassment on our platform.
Yeah, I understand, but you essentially created a protected class if this is the case, because despite these studies and what these studies are showing, there's a gigantic suicide rate amongst trans people. Period. It's a 40%. It's outrageously large. Now, whether that is because of gender dysphoria, whether that is because of the complications from sexual surgery, sexual transition surgery, whether it's because of bullying, whether it's because of this awful feeling of being born in the wrong gender, all that is yet to be determined. the fact that they've shown that there's a large amount of trans people that are committing suicide, I don't necessarily think that makes sense in terms of people from someone's perspective, like a Ben Shapiro, saying that if you are biologically female, if you are born with a double X chromosome, you will never be XY. If he says that, that's a violation of your policy. And you're creating a protected class.
To be fair,
yes.
Targeted.
Yeah,
if it's targeted at,
or targeting.
yes, if
Right.
he wants
It's a
to
conduct.
express that opinion,
So
he
what if
is
he
fully
said-
entitled to express that opinion. If he's doing it in a manner that's targeted at an individual
Repeatedly.
and saying that,
Okay, but what about
That's where the intent and
you know what's
behavior
going on
comes
with Martina Navratilova right now? Martina Navratilova. Why can't I say that? I don't think I've ever said it. Martina Navratilova. Is it Talova or Tralova? Anyway, epic, world-class, legend tennis player, right? Who happens to be lesbian, is being harassed because she says that she doesn't believe that trans women, meaning someone who's biologically male, who transitions to a female, should be able to compete in sports against biological females. This is something that I agree with. This is something I have personally experienced a tremendous amount of harassment because I stood up when there was a woman who's a trans woman who's fighting biological females in mixed martial arts fights and destroying these women. And I was saying, you just watch this and tell me this doesn't look crazy to you. My point is, you should be able to express yourself. And if you say that you believe someone is biologically male, even though they identify as a female, that's a perspective that should be valid. I mean, this is first of all, it's biologically correct. So we have a problem in that if your standards and your policies are not biologically accurate, then you're dealing with an ideological policy. And just because, I mean, I don't want to target trans people. I don't want to harass them. I'll call anybody whatever they want. I mean, if you want to change your name to a woman's name and identify as a woman, I'm 100% cool with that. But by saying I don't think that you should be able to compete as a woman, this opens me up for harassment. And I never reported any of it. I just don't pay attention to it.
But in going into like Meghan Murphy, for instance, right? You can call that target harassment if Meghan Murphy, who is, for those that don't know, she's a radical feminist who refuses to use the transgender pronouns. If she's in an argument with a trans person over whether or not they should be allowed in sports or in biologically female spaces, and she refuses to use their pronoun because of her ideology, you'll ban them.
again, it depends on the context on the platform, and it's also not banned permanently. Like, you get warnings.
Well, she was banned permanently, but let's be clear about what happened.
But she was warned
because you explained it to me. What did she actually do?
My understanding, and I don't have the tweet by tweet the way that I did for the others, but my understanding is that she was warned multiple times for misgendering an individual that she was in an argument with, and this individual is actually bringing a lawsuit against her in Canada as well. So it is.
So you have an argument between two people.
Again,
and you have a rule that enforces only one side of the ideology, and you've banned only one of those people.
We have a rule that attempts to address what we have perceived to be instances of abuse and harassment.
And she was saying
it's your ideology.
Right, but it is an ideology, right? If she's saying a man is never a woman, if that's what she's saying, and then biologically she's correct, we obviously have a debate here. This is not a clear cut. This is not something like you could say water is wet, this is dry. This is not like something you could prove. This is something where you have to acknowledge that there's an understanding that if someone is a trans person, we all agree to consider them a woman and to think of them as a woman, to talk to them and address them with their preferred name and their preferred pronouns. But biologically, this is not accurate. So we have a divide here. We have a divide between the conservative estimation of what's happening and then the definition that's the liberal definition of it.
I think that's right, Joe. And I think what I'm trying to say is that it's not that you can't have those viewpoints. It's that if you're taking those viewpoints and you're targeting them at a specific person in a way that reflects your intent to abuse and harass them.
But what if it's in the context of the conversation? What if she's saying that I don't think that trans women should be allowed in these female spaces to make decisions for women? and then this person's arguing, and she says a woman is biologically female. You are never going to be a woman.
She responded with, "Men aren't women, though," and that was her first in the series of events. That's what got her the suspension and the warning.
That was one of many tweets that was part of providing context, and that was actually the second actually. Strike is my understanding.
But why is that a strike?
Yeah, why is that a strike?
But again, like, it's the context of, I don't have all the tweets in front of me. There were like 10 or 12 tweets going back and forth. And my understanding is that in the context of all of those, she was misgendering a particular person. Not that she was holding a belief or statement.
It was a public figure, though, wasn't it?
I don't know.
It was. So you're having an individual who is debating a high-profile individual in her community, and she's expressing her ideology versus hers, and you have opted to ban one of those ideologies.
But it's within the context of this conversation.
Yeah.
This is what is being debated, whether or not someone is in fact a woman when they were born a male.
I understand that this is controversial. I do.
Especially to a radical feminist.
I understand why people would not agree with the rule. But that being said, it is a rule on our platform, and once you're warned about the rule, to repeatedly post the same content is also going to be a violation of our rules.
Right, but the rule, this seems like a good example of an ideologically based rule. If she's saying that a man is never a woman, though, that is not in that context harassment. That is a very specific opinion that she has that happens to be biologically accurate. Now, I don't agree with targeting harassment on anybody, and I targeted harassment on trans people or straight people or whatever. I don't agree with it. I don't think you should do it. It's not something I want to do. But in this context, what she's saying is not just her expression, but it's accurate.
I think an important point is, if I tweeted to you, Joe, you are not a hamster, that's clearly not a violation of the rules. However, there are...
If I identify as a hamster.
Well, no, it wouldn't be clear, because I know people who have specifically begun using insults of animals to avoid getting kicked off the platform for breaking the rules. Certain individuals who have been suspended now use certain small woodland creatures in place of slurs, so they're not really insulting it, and it's fine. But there are people who consider themselves trans species. Now, I'm not trying to belittle the trans community by no means. I'm just trying to point out that you have a specific rule for one set of people, and there are people who have general body dysphoria. You don't have rules on that. There are people who have actually amputated their own arms. You don't have rules on that. You have a very specific rule set. And more importantly, in the context of a targeted conversation, I can say a whole bunch of things that would never be considered a rule break, but that one is, which is ideologically driven.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback. I mean, we're again, always learning and trying to understand different people's perspectives. And all I'll say is that our intent is not to police ideology. Our intent is to police behaviors that we view as abusive and harassment. And I hear your point of view, and it's something that I'll definitely discuss with my team.
And even in this case, it wasn't just going against this particular rule, but also things that were more ban evasive as well, including taking a screenshot of the original tweet, reposting it, which is against our terms of service.
Well, that sounds like
so it's more the essence.
It sounded like a protest against your rule.
But,
I understand you can ban them for it.
But people can protest any one of our rules. We can't like let them do that.
No,
they can protest
agree.
any of them.
I'm not disagreeing. I understand what you're saying, but I just want to make sure I point out she was clearly doing it as an effort to push back on what she viewed as an ideologically driven rule.
Well, this is a real debate in the LGBT community. This is a debate where there's a division, and there's a division between people that think that trans women are invading biological female spaces and making decisions that don't benefit these biological females, cisgender, whatever you want to call them. This is an actual debate, and it's a debate amongst progressive people, amongst left-wing people. I mean, it's a debate amongst liberals. This is, I mean, I would imagine the vast majority of people in the LGBT community are in fact on the left. And this is one example of that. So you have a protected class that's having an argument with a woman who feels like there's an ideological bent to this conversation that is not only not accurate but not fair. And she feels like it's not fair for biological women. The same as Martina.
Well, I'll take this to its logical conclusion. I got sent a screenshot from somebody, and maybe it's faked. I think it was real. They were having an argument with someone on Twitter and responded with, "Dude, comma, you don't know, blah, blah, blah." And they got a suspension and a lockout, had to delete the tweet because the individual, using a cartoon avatar with the their name was, apparently was Sam, reported it and said that I'm transgender and he's calling me dude, and the Twitter user actually got a suspension for it. So I can understand mistakes happen, but when you have a rule that's like that, there's colloquial terms that are like, man, come on, don't say that.
Dude is like we say it, like I asked you guys when you were going to take a photo in front of this thing. I said guys, but I included you.
And I wasn't offended.
Thank you for
and
not
I
being
wouldn't have
offended.
reported you for it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's tricky, but in this case of Megan Murphy, that's her name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. That seems like she should be allowed to express herself. And this is not being, she's not being mean by saying a man is never a woman. This is a perspective that is scientifically accurate. That's part of the problem.
I just don't want to run into beating a dead horse. So I think I want to.
Well, it's a really important thing to go over all the nuances of this particular subject, because I think that one in particular highlights this idea of where the problems lie in having a protected class. And I think we should be compassionate.
We have a lot of protected classes: gender, race, nationality. Like, these are the protected
But
classes.
it's not for white people. When you say gender or race, it's not
all protected categories. So you can't attack someone for their belonging to a particular race or a particular religion.
But you can mock white people ad nauseum, and it's not a problem. It doesn't get removed.
I'm not talking about mocking. I'm talking about abusing and harassing.
But I mean, if you mock a black person in the same way, it would be considered targeted racism.
Again, it's about targeted harassment on the platform.
Well, I mean,
okay, but what is targeted harassment? I mean, but when you're like if you have, what is racism? Is racism only? I mean, there's this progressive perspective of racism that it's only possible if you're from a more powerful class. It's only punching down. That's the only racism. I don't think that makes any sense. I think racism is looking at someone that is from whatever race and deciding that they are in fact less worthy or less valuable, whatever it is. That takes place across the platform against white people. Now, I'm not saying white people need protection. I know it's easier being a white person in America. It's a fact. But it's hypocritical to have a policy that only distinguishes you can make fun of white people all day long, but if you decide to make fun of Asian folks or, fill in the blank, that is racist. But making fun of white people isn't, and it doesn't get removed. There are tons of... Look, how about Sarah John from the New York Times? That's
well, I can actually explain that.
Please do.
That was... my understanding is that you guys started banning people officially under these policies around 2015, and all the tweets she made was prior to that, and so you didn't enforce the old rules.
Yeah, so our hateful conduct policy, Joe, just to be clear, is across the board, meaning like it doesn't just protect women. All races. This is how the law is set up in the United States, right? You can't discriminate against white men. You can't discriminate against black men. Like, those are the laws, right? Like, that's the structure it is. It doesn't take into consideration.
So if someone says something about white people and mocks white people on Twitter, what do you do about that?
If it's targeted harassment.
Targeted.
At a person.
So just white people in general. If you say something about white people in general, it's not an issue?
Well, I mean, we focus on targeted harassment, which is behavior that is targeted against an individual who belongs to that class.
Okay.
Because if you try to police every opinion that people have about different races or religions, like, obviously that's a very different story. So this is about if you target that to somebody who belongs to that class, and that's reported to us, that is a violation of our rules. And so in the Sarah Gian case, we did see many tweets of that nature that were focused on people who were white or men, and our rules in this area came into effect in 2015 because our hateful conduct policy. And a lot of those tweets were from a time period where those were
And in her defense, she was actually supposedly responding to people that have, you don't believe that?
Oh, come on, over 3 years. And she's tweeting blanket statements about, like, yeah, sure. But, so I will say, too, obviously, I've done...
Can I just finish on my one point? So in that case, there were tweets from before the rules went into effect and tweets from after the rules went into effect, and we did take action on the tweets from after the rules went into effect.
She's also pretty young,
but
right?
So I want to point, yeah, she's in her 20s.
Yeah,
but
so we're talking about something that might have happened 8 years ago, right?
Right, it was like 2011 to 13.
Yeah.
But I do want to point this out. Before coming on, I did a decent amount of research. I searched for slurs against white people, black people, Latinos, and I found copious, just tons and tons of them. Now, they don't go back, most of what I found didn't go back too far because it does seem like you guys are doing your best, but there's a lot. And it targets white people, black people, Jewish people, it's
everybody.
And I can understand that you got hundreds of millions. But let's try another subject.
Just to address that point, and I think Jack talked about this a little bit. Like, this is where right now we have a system that relies on people to report it to us, which is a huge burden on people. And especially if you're happen to be a high-profile person, and Tim, you would understand this. You're not going to sit there and report every tweet, and Joe, you'll understand this. It's not worth your time. You're not going to go through tweet by tweet as people respond to you and report it. People tell us this all the time. So this is where we have to start getting better at identifying when this is happening and taking action on it without waiting for somebody to tell us it's happening.
But using an algorithm, though, do you not miss context? I mean, it seems to me that there's a lot of people that say things in humor, you know,
or slurs within particular communities, which is perfectly reasonable.
Right.
So yes, there is a danger of the algorithms missing context, and that's why we really want to go carefully into this, and this is why we've scoped it down first and foremost to doxing, which is at least first it hits our number one goal, protecting physical safety, like making sure that nothing done online will impact someone's physical safety offline on our platform in this case. The second is that there are patterns around doxing that are much easier to see without having the context. There are exceptions, of course, because you could dox someone's public, a representative's public office phone number and email address, and the algorithm might catch that, not have the context that this is a U.S. representative, and this information is already public.
So essentially, it highlights how insanely difficult it is to monitor all of these posts. And then what is the volume? Like, what are we dealing with? Like, how many posts do you guys get a day?
Hundreds of millions of posts a day.
And how many human beings are manually reviewing any of these things?
I don't have that number. A lot.
A lot. Thousands, hundreds of thousands. How many employees do you guys have?
We have 4,000 employees around the world.
That's it?
Yeah.
We have 4,000 employees. The reason
that's crazy though. But stop and think about that. 4,000 people that are monitoring hundreds of millions of tweets.
No. We have a small team who's monitoring tweets, and some of them are employed by us. Some of them are contractors throughout the world.
So 4,000 employees total.
4,000 employees who are engineers, who are designers, who are lawyers.
So the number of people actually monitoring tweets is probably less than 1,000.
Well, the reason we don't give out specific numbers is we need to scale these dynamically, right? If we see a particular event within a country, we might hire 100 more people on contract to deal with it.
Right.
Whereas they may not be full-time and with us the entire time.
And they have the ability to take down tweets?
So as we get reports, it goes into a queue, and those are ranked by severity. And then we have people who look at our rules and look at the tweets and look at the behavior and the context around it. And they have the ability to go down that enforcement spectrum that Vijay talked about. One, make people log in, read why it's a violation of our tweet and delete it.
Yes.
2, temporary suspensions, and finally, a permanent suspension, which is the absolute last resort, which we ultimately do not want to do. We want to make sure that our rules are also guided towards incentivizing more healthy conversation and more participation.
So let me ask you, the rules you have are not based in U.S. law, right? U.S. law doesn't recognize restrictions on hate speech. It's considered free speech. So if you want to stand on a street corner and yell the craziest things in the world, you're allowed to. On your platform, Twitter, you're not allowed to. So even in that sense alone, your rules do have an ideology behind them. I don't completely disagree. I think, I don't want harassment. But the reason I bring this up is getting into discussion about democratic health of a nation. So I think it can't be disputed at this point that Twitter is extremely powerful in influencing elections. I'm pretty sure you guys published recently a bunch of tweets from foreign actors that were trying to meddle in elections. Mm-hmm. So even you as a company recognize that foreign entities are trying to manipulate people using this platform. Mm-hmm. So there's a few things I want to ask beyond this, but wouldn't it be important then to just, at a certain point, Twitter becomes so powerful in influencing elections and giving access to even the president's tweets that you should allow people to use the platform based under the norms of U.S. law? First Amendment, free speech, right to expression on the platform. This is becoming too much it's becoming too powerful in how our elections are taking place. So even if you are saying, well, hate speech is our rule, and a lot of people agree with it, if at any point one person disagrees, there's still an American who has a right to this, to access to the public discourse, and you've essentially monopolized that, and not completely, but for the most part. So isn't there some responsibility on you to guarantee, at a certain extent, less regulation happen, right? Like, look, if you recognize foreign governments are manipulating our elections, then shouldn't you guarantee the right to an American to access this platform, to be involved in the electoral process?
I'm not sure I see the tie between those things, but I will address one of your points, which was we're a platform that serves the world. So we're global. 75% of the users of Twitter are outside of the United States.
Oh, right.
So we don't apply laws of just one country when we're thinking about it. We think about how do you have a global standard that can meet the threshold of as many countries as possible, because we want all the people in the world to be able to participate in this conversation.
And also meet elections like the Indian election.
Right. And my understanding is you were also accused of being biased against conservatives in India recently. There's a report on that, as well as you held up a sign that said something offensive about Obama. Yeah. So, in that sense, even in other countries, you're accused of the same things that you're being accused of by American conservatives.
I think that the situations are very, very different. And I don't think that the ideologies in play are the same.
Well, so the reason
Can we clarify that?
I'm not sure what you're talking about, but we did have our Vice President of Public Policy testifying in front of the Indian Parliament a couple weeks ago, and they were really focused on election integrity and safety and abuse and harassment of women and political figures and the likes.
So my concern, I guess, is I recognize you're a company that serves the world, but as an American, I have a concern that the democracy I live in, the Democratic Republic, and the democratic functions, are healthy. One of the biggest threats is, Russia, Iran, China. They're trying to meddle in our elections using your platform, and it's effective. So much so that you've actually come out and removed many people. Covington was apparently started by a company in Brazil. The Covington scandal, where this fake news goes viral, was reported by CNN that it was a dummy account. They were trying to prop it up, and they were pushing out this out of context information. So they do this. They use your platform to do it. You now got a platform that is so powerful in our American discourse that foreign governments are using their weapons against us. And you've taken a stance against the laws of the United States. I don't mean like against us breaking the law. I mean you have rules that go beyond the scope of the U.S., which will restrict American citizens from being able to participate. Meanwhile, foreign actors are free to do so long as they play by your rules. So our elections are being threatened by the fact that if there's an American citizen who says, I do not believe in your misgendering policy, and you ban them, that person has been removed from public discourse on Twitter.
But they don't get banned for saying they don't agree with it. They get banned for specifically violating it by targeting engagement.
Let's say in protest, an individual repeatedly says, no, I refuse to use your pronouns, in like Megan Murphy's case. And she's Canadian, so I don't want to use her specifically. The point I'm trying to make is, at a certain level, there are going to be American citizens who have been removed from this public discourse, which has become so absurdly powerful, foreign governments weaponize it, because you have different rules than the American country has.
So just to be clear, my understanding, and I'm not an expert on all the platforms, is that foreign governments use multiple different ways to interfere in elections. It is not limited to our platform, nor is it limited to social media.
But the president is on Twitter.
The president is on a lot of different platforms, as is the White House.
I think it's fair to point out the media coverage of his Twitter account is insane, and they run news stories every time he tweets. And so,
certainly undeniable. I'm just pointing out that there are a number of different avenues for this, and individuals have choices in how they use the platform.
Yeah, he might have other platforms, but he uses Twitter exclusively.
And what I'm trying to bring up is that if Twitter refuses to acknowledge this problem, you are facing regulation. I don't know if you care about that. But at a certain point,
Which problem?
If you're going to restrict American citizens from participating on a platform where even the president speaks, and it's essentially you have a privately owned public space, if I could use an analogy that would be most apt, and you've set rules that are not recognized by the U.S. In fact, when it came to a Supreme Court hearing, they said hate speech is not a violation, it's actually protected free speech. So there's actual odds. So there might be someone who says, I refuse to live by any other means than what the Supreme Court set down. That means I have a right to hate speech. You will ban them. That means your platform is so powerful, it's being used to manipulate elections, and you have rules that are not recognized by the government to remove American citizens from that discourse. So as a private platform, you become too powerful to not be regulated if you refuse to allow people free speech.
But I'm trying to pick apart the connection I think so. Yes, we do have an issue with foreign
one more on
entities
the game
and misinformation, and this is a
one match.
extremely complicated
Rival.
issue which we're just beginning to understand and grasp and take action on. I don't think that issue is solved purely by not being more aggressive on something else that is taking people off the platform entirely as well, which is abuse and harassment. Like it's a cost-benefit analysis ultimately, and our rules are designed again, and they don't always manifest this way in the outcomes, but in terms of what we're trying to drive is opportunity for every single person to be able to speak freely on the platform. And
that's absolutely not true. You don't allow hate speech, so free speech is not on your platform.
I said
speak freely.
Enable everyone, create the opportunity for everyone to speak on our service.
Unless it's hate speech, right?
And in part of that, the recognition that we're taking action on is that when some people encounter particular conduct, that we see them wanting to remove themselves from the platform completely, which goes against that principle of enabling everyone to speak or giving people the opportunity to speak. So rules are focused on the opportunities presented, and we have particular outcomes to make sure that those opportunities are as large as possible.
Let's separate the point I made about foreign governments was just to explain the power that your platform holds and how it can be weaponized. We'll separate that now. When Antifa shows up to Berkeley and bashes a guy over there with a bike lock, that is suppressing his speech, right? That's an act of physical violence. However, when Antifa links hands and blocks a door so that no one can go to an event, that is also legally allowed, right? So what you're saying is that if someone is engaging in behavior, such as going on Twitter and shouting someone down relentlessly, that's something external to what happens in the world under the U.S. government. I am allowed to scream very close to you and not let you speak in public, but on Twitter you don't allow that. So there's a dramatic difference between what Twitter thinks is okay and what the U.S. government thinks is okay, how our democracy functions and how Twitter functions. The issue I'm pointing out is that we know Twitter is becoming extremely important in how our public discourse is occurring, how our culture is developing, and who even gets elected. So if you have rules that are based on a global policy, that means American citizens who are abiding by all of the laws of our country are being restricted from engaging in public discourse because you've monopolized it.
Can I counter that, though? Because these foreign governments are restricted by the same rules. So if they violate those same rules, they will be removed. So if they play within those rules, they can participate in the discourse, even if they are just trying to manipulate our elections. On the other hand, if the people that are on the platform play by those rules, they can also counteract.
Unless their ideology goes in line with U.S. law and is legally allowed, as opposed to what you allow. So foreign governments can absolutely keep making new accounts and keep botting and keep manipulating. They can even post things that'll go viral and then get banned and not care.
Right.
But a private American citizen can say, here's my opinion, I refuse to back down.
I see what you're saying.
You will ban him. So we can see that at a certain point, you have a lot. Twitter is slowly gaining, in my opinion, too much control from your personal ideology based on what you've researched, what you think is right, over American discourse. If Twitter, and this is my opinion, I'm not a lawmaker, but I would have to assume if Twitter refuses to say in the United States you are allowed to say what is legally acceptable, period, then lawmakers' only choice will be to enforce regulation on your company.
Actually, Tom, I spend quite a bit of time talking to lawmakers as part of my role. I'm head of public policy. Spend a lot of time in D.C. I would say that Jack and I have both spent a lot of time in D.C. And I think from the perspective of lawmakers, they, across the spectrum, are also in favor of policing abuse and harassment online and bullying online.
Well,
those are things that people care about because they affect their children, and they affect their communities, and they affect individuals. And so I don't think that, and as a private American business, we can have different standards than what an American government-owned corporation or American government would have to institute. Those are two different things. And I understand your point about the influence, and I'm not denying that. Certainly, Twitter is an influential platform. But like anything, whether it's the American law or the rules of Twitter or the rules of Facebook or rules of any platform, there are rules. And those rules have to be followed. So it is your choice whether to follow those rules and to continue to participate in a civic dialogue. Or it is your choice to not do that.
Absolutely. You've monopolized public discourse to an extreme degree, and you say my way or the highway. We
haven't monopolized it. There are many different avenues for people to continue to have a voice. There are many different platforms that offer that. We are a largely influential one. I'm not trying to take away from that, and we're a very important one.
You don't need to be the most important. It's just that you are extremely important. And that's a compliment. Twitter has become extremely powerful. But at a certain point, you should not have the right to control what people are allowed to say. No private or look, I'm a social liberal. I think we should regulate you guys because you are unelected officials running your system the way you see fit against the wishes of a democratic republic, and there are people who disagree with you who are being excised from public discourse because of your ideology. That terrifies me. And we can take it one step further.
So Tim, just so I understand, so are you suggesting that we don't have any policies around abuse and harassment on the platform? I'm trying to understand what it is you're saying, because I'm not sure I'm following you. So you don't think we should have any rules about abuse and harassment? So even the threats that you received, that you mentioned that we did, but you mentioned a number of threats that you received, and you were quite frustrated that we hadn't taken action on them. You think we shouldn't have rules that?
I'm frustrated because of the hypocrisy of when I see the flow in one direction, and then what I see are Republican politicians who, in my opinion, are just too ignorant to understand what the hell's going on around them. And I see people burning signs that say free speech. I see you openly saying, we recognize the power of our platform, and we are not going to abide by American norms. I see the manipulation of Twitter in violation of our elections. I see Democratic operatives in Alabama waging a false flag campaign using fake Russian accounts, and the guy who runs that company has not been banned from your platform, even after it's been written by the New York Times he was doing this. So we know that not only are people manipulating your platform, you have rules that remove honest American citizens with bad opinions who have a right to engage in public discourse, and it's like you recognize it, but you like having the power. I'm not quite sure at what point.
So just to get back to my point, so you believe that Twitter should not have any rules about abuse and harassment or any sort of hate speech on the platform? That's your position?
Well, that's extremely reductive. I don't know, maybe too simplistic. The point I'm trying to make is,
but that is the point you're trying to make. You're asking us to comply with the U.S. law that would criminalize potential speech and put people in jail for it, and you're asking us to enforce those standards.
Well, I mean, if you incite death, it's a crime. You can go to jail for that. So at the very least, you could, like when you have people on your platform who commit a crime and you don't ban them, I say, well, that's really weird. And then when you have people on your platform who say a bad, naughty word, you do ban them, I say, well, that's really weird. I mean, I've seen people get banned for tweeting an N to you. I understand what they're trying to do when they tweet letters at you. But they get suspended for it. They get a threat. You know, like you can't. Let's talk about learn to code.
Wait a minute.
Right?
What do you mean by that?
There are people who know that they can tweet a single letter, and the next person knows what letter they need to tweet. You see what I'm saying? So you'll see, one user will say N, the next user will put an I, the next user will put a G. Yes. And so they get suspended for doing so. And these are the people who are trying to push the buttons on the rules, right?
They get suspended for that?
Absolutely. So, because I think, but here's the thing. I think your team understands what they're doing. However, you get to really dangerous territory if someone accidentally tweets an N and you assume they're trying to engage in a harassment campaign, which is why I said let's talk about learn to code.
Well, we do look at coordination of accounts.
Do you do that through direct messages?
I don't know about direct messages, but
do you read direct messages?
We don't read direct messages.
We don't read them unless someone reports a direct message to us that they have received.
And so you read their direct message that they send to you?
So if you have a direct message and someone says something horrible and they receive a death threat and you report that to us,
then you read it.
Then we would read it because you've reported it to us.
Does anyone in the company have access to direct messages other than that?
Only in the context, again, of reviewing reports.
Other than that, they're not accessible?
Not to my knowledge. I don't know what you mean. Like, we're not
accessible.
Reading them. We're not reading them.
Is it possible that someone could go into Tim's direct messages and just read his direct messages?
I don't think so.
So if Tim writes an N, and I write an I, and Jamie writes a G, can you go into our direct messages and say, hey, let's fuck with Jack, and we're going to write this stuff out, and we're going to do it, and let's see if they ban us? You can't read that.
I don't think so.
So if that's the case, how would you know if there was a concerted effort?
But I think what he's saying is, like, if we do see those train of replies, then that is coordination.
You know what people are doing, right?
Yes. The point I'm trying to make is, how do you prove it?
Well, I think beyond the end. Like, you know, the first person to put the letter, you can't prove he did it, but everybody else you kind of can.
But I don't think we would.
Well, look, I can say this. I've been sent numerous screenshots where screenshots can be fake, I recognize it, but I've seen people actually tweet, and then I've seen the tweet follow up.
Right after one letter?
Yeah, someone tweeted at you, someone decently high profile, like a big YouTuber, tweeted an N at you, and then got like a 12-hour suspension. Yeah. But let's talk about learn to code, right? And why are people being suspended for tweeting hashtag learn to code?
Yep. We did some research on this.
Yes, we did some research on this. So there was a situation, I guess about a month ago or so, where a number of journalists were receiving a variety of tweets, some containing learn to code, some containing a bunch of other coded language that was wishes of harm. These were thousands and thousands of tweets being directed at a handful of journalists. And we did some research, and what we found was a number of the accounts that were engaging in this behavior, which is tweeting at the journalists with links to either learn to code or things like Day of the Rope and other coded language, were actually ban-evaded accounts. That means accounts that had been previously suspended. And we also learned that there was a targeted campaign being organized off our platform to abuse and harass these journalists.
That's not true.
It's clear that this taste.
So see, here's the thing. An activist who works for NBC wrote that story and then lobbied you. You issued an official statement, and then even the editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller got a suspension for tweeting "Learn to Code" at the Daily Show.
So I have never talked to anybody from NBC about this issue, so I'm not sure.
So they report it. Don't misrepresent me. They report it. The narrative goes far and wide amongst your circles. Then all of a sudden, you're seeing high-profile conservatives tweeting a joke, getting suspensions.
So again, some of these tweets actually contained death threats, wishes of harm, other coded language that we've seen to mean death to journalists. So it wasn't about just the learn to code. It was about the context that we were seeing.
That's just not true. That's just not true. The editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller was suspended for tweeting nothing but hashtag learn to code.
So, Tim, can I finish what I was saying?
Yeah.
So we were looking at the context, and what was happening is there were journalists receiving hundreds of tweets. Some had death threats, some had wishes of harm, some just learned to code. And in that particular context, we made a decision. We consider this type of behavior but dogpiling, which is when all of a sudden individuals are getting tons and tons of tweets at them. They feel very abused or harassed on the platform.
Can we pause this, because this is super confusing for people who don't know the context. The learn to code thing is in response to people saying that people that are losing their jobs, like coal miners and truck drivers and things like that, could learn to code. It was almost like in jest initially. Or if it wasn't in jest initially, it was so poorly thought out as a suggestion that people started mocking it, right?
Correct? So
Is this correct?
The first stories that came out were simply like miners